Chapter 640. The group of children was already lively enough, but Yang Yi's appearance pushed the atmosphere to a climax. She's daddy. Uncle Yang Yi. Uncle Yang. The uncle who can cook. Cece's papa was covered by all kinds of strange names. More than 20 children surrounded Yang Yi one after another. Their black eyes were full of curiosity and expectation. They jumped up and down in joy, showing the liveliness and energy that their age should have. Of course, it was also a little frightening. After sending Yun Yongfeng off, Yang Yi rushed over to find Shi. He was a little anxious and did not bring the snacks and desserts that he had prepared for the children. Now that he was surrounded, his hands were empty and he looked awkward. However, this was not what the children were concerned about. Uncle Yang, I want to eat pig trotters too. Little Belle Ding Ling's voice was soft and a little shy, but it was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. The children nodded their heads. Even Lu Weisha was looking forward to it eagerly. Yesterday, which was Monday, Yang Yi had specially bought an insulated lunchbox and filled it with some pig trotters and ginger vinegar for Shi to share with her friends at the kindergarten. Because there was a lot of it, not only did the children who often played with Shi taste it, but 3 boys also came over to get a piece. Everything else aside, the sweet and sour taste was definitely a child's favorite. The news of how delicious the pig trotters were spread among the children in Springfield Kindergarten's upper class, but most of the children could only listen to other children's descriptions while drooling. Ding Ling, who did not have anything to eat at that time, could only remember this important thing, as she smelled the aroma and watched Lan Xen eat heartily. Among them, the one who was least anxious was Lan Xen. The chubby girl giggled and whispered into Shi's ear, Shi, let's not tell them that I ate at your house, okay? After Lan Xen found out that Shi's house had such delicious pig trotters, she left her father last night and ran over to Shi's house to eat and drink. Of course, this was also a daily occurrence. After that, Boss Lan called Yang Yi to ask for the recipe, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She complained that Fu Jun didn't tell her the recipe, but that didn't need to be explained in detail. Shi felt that this was a little secret between her and Lan Xen. The little girl smiled and nodded. Facing this scene, Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How could he take care of all these little fellows? I'm not running a restaurant. Besides, Yang Yi didn't think of this. Ahem, I can't bring the pig trotters over, but this afternoon, Uncle will treat you all to a delicious hot pot, okay? Yang Yi's mind turned and he said, then, if you still want to eat pig trotters, Uncle can tell your parents how to make this dish. Then, if you want to eat it in the future, you can ask your parents to make it. It had to be said that the children were quite easy to satisfy. When they heard that there was hot pot for lunch and that they were going to eat a big meal, they all forgot about the pig trotters and let go of Yang Yi in satisfaction. They giggled and looked for their next target of interest. On the other hand, Ding Ling, perhaps because she grew up in a single-parent family with only one father at home and her father was very busy with work, the little girl was more insecure. She felt that Yang Yi was very close and reached out her hand to ask Yang Yi to hold her hand. Yang Yi didn't mind. He held Ding Ling's little hand and said to Teacher Mu, "How are the children's studies? Have you arranged who will sing each part?" This scene was inadvertently seen by Shi, who was showing her friends in front of them. The little girl suddenly felt a little jealous. If it were Lan Xen or Yang Luoqi, she wouldn't have such a big reaction, but Ding Ling and Shi were not close. They were just ordinary friends. The little girl pursed her lips and thought with some grievances, Papa doesn't even hold my hand. How can he hold another girl's hand? You can't hold another girl's hand. Well, except for Mom. And Brother. Brother doesn't seem to be a girl? I don't care. She let go of Yang Luoqi's hand and ran to her father's side. She pouted and reached out to her father, saying, Papa, I want you to hold my hand. Yang Yi looked down at his daughter. He didn't think too much. He smiled slightly, took Shi's little hand with his empty right hand, and continued to talk with Teacher Mu. She didn't care much about what the adults said. She was held by her father, so she took the opportunity to grab one of her father's fingers. Only then did she feel a little relieved. It seemed that if her father was going to be taken away, She would hold her father's hand and her father would not disappear. The little girl looked at Ding Ling with some hostility, but Ding Ling did not notice this. She was curiously looking around the recording studio that they had just been led to with the rest of the group. There were so many instruments and equipment that the children were dazzled by them. Of course, Shi's little thought came and went quickly. After Yang Yi let go of their hands at the same time, she didn't deliberately stick to her father. Instead, she looked at her father with some admiration. Like a leader or a teacher, she walked to all the children and talked to them. Children, just now Teacher Mu told Uncle Yang that you all learned to sing the Song of the Pig, right? Yang Yi clapped his hands and asked with a smile. We know how to sing it. As if they were fighting to answer, the children all rushed to answer. It wasn't just the little boys who were so enthusiastic. The little girls hadn't reached the age of being reserved yet. At this time, they excitedly shouted even harder than the little boys. They didn't just answer. For example, Chen Shiyun, an absolute activist, even sang loudly in order to show off. Pig, your nose has 2 holes. It was as if a fire had been lit in oil. The children all rushed to sing. Even Ding Ling, who was a little shy before, followed. When you had a cold, you still had snot and cow cow. Although the lyrics of this song were different, because it was catchy and very interesting, the children all remembered the first few verses and could sing it casually. The last few verses weren't a problem. As long as someone led them, they could also vaguely follow along. Yang Luoqi and Shi, the 2 little girls who loved to dance, even twisted their little buttocks and performed the simple pig dance that the choreographer and teacher Shen had taught them. They couldn't stop giggling. Mo Xiaowan and Xiao Ai, who were accompanying the children at the back, couldn't help but shake their heads with a smile when they saw the lively children and their interesting appearances when they sang. After they finished singing, Yang Yi asked everyone to applaud the children and said with a smile, "You all sang very well. In a while, Teacher Mu will divide you into groups. Each of you will sing the designated verses with the children in your group, okay? This is Teacher Jean. Teacher Jean will teach you how to sing better." Yang Yi even pulled Jean Yingming out. Jean Yingming looked at the group of children and felt a little headache. He had been a music producer for so many years, but he had never served so many children. However, the boss had ordered him to participate in the recording of such an interesting song. Jean Yingming braced himself and waved to the children with a smile. "Hello, Teacher Jean." The children were very polite and shouted one after another. However, it was not easy to deal with so many children. Before the recording started, they were excited and curious to explore the recording studio. Although they had just met, Chen Shiyun dared to point to the console and ask Jean Yingming, "Teacher Jean, what is this? Is this microphone used to record songs?" There was also Wang Shijuan. He remembered his question outside and Shi's answer, so he ran to Jean Yingming, pulled Jean Yingming's sleeve, and asked, "Teacher Jean, are you the Uncle Jean that Shishi mentioned? Do you know how to play the strange zither outside?" How could Wang Shijuan remember the name of that zither? The group of children chattered, and Jean Yingming, who liked to listen to songs quietly, almost collapsed. Would the recording go smoothly? Chapter 641. The children were grouped according to their voices. The difference in their voices would not be too big. They would be in the same group, but it had nothing to do with their gender. At this age, the boys were far from changing their voices. It was difficult to distinguish the gender of their tender voices. Therefore, Shi, Yang Luoqi, Nan Zhaoyu, Ding Ling, and a few other children were in the same group. Chen Shiyun, Lan Xin, and a few other boys with louder voices were in the same group. There were several other groups, and each group was responsible for singing a section. Shi, you are the group leader of your group. You have to take the lead. Yang Yi smiled and touched his daughter's little head after Mr. Mu finished speaking. "Papa, what am I going to do?" Shi asked with some confusion. "I know you have to sing." Chen Shiyun shouted with a smile. "That's right. Just sing. Although the recording may be boring, you have to persevere and sing well." Yang Yi said softly, "Children, can you?" Yes. They agreed very actively, but he did not know if they listened. Shi's group was going to sing the first section. Yang Yi accompanied them into the recording room and asked them to stand in an arc around the professional microphone. He also helped them put on the monitoring headphones. They were going to listen to the accompaniment through the monitoring headphones. After the children entered the recording room, their curiosity was ignited again. The things inside were different from those outside, especially the microphone. Why was there a cobweb-like thing around the butt? Why did they have to wear headphones? What was this board? She was not the most well-behaved girl. She asked the most questions. Although she had come to the studio with her mother and father, and there was a small recording studio at home, she stayed outside the recording room at most. Basically, she had never entered the recording room. Therefore, she looked around curiously, pointed to the soundproof wall and said to her father, "Papa, look, that wall is strange. Is it sick?" Yang Yi finally answered these questions for them, and the little ones became very interested in the monitoring headphones on their ears. Hey, can you hear me? Outside, Jin Ming had no choice but to turn on the microphone to Chen Shiyun and the others. The little girls couldn't wait to talk to their friends inside. "I can hear it, Chen Shiyun is calling us." She heard the voice from the monitoring headset and looked around in surprise. Finally, they saw Chen Shiyun and the others on the control panel outside the window. All of a sudden, Shi, Yang Luoqi, and the others waved at Chen Shiyun excitedly. However, Chen Shiyun did not respond. It was not until Jin Ming turned on the microphone that Chen Shiyun spoke to Shi and the others. It was just like in the era when telephones were not popular yet. The children used cylindrical paper boxes, cotton threads, and small wooden sticks to make primitive telephones. This magical way of making calls made them very interesting. However, it still wasted a lot of time. Yang Yi and the other teachers coaxed them for a long time before they calmed down a little. Finally, they could start recording songs. However, it was not easy to get the children to record a good song. Singing a cappella was one thing, but following the accompaniment and singing the right beat was another. Shi and the others were wearing headphones and standing in front of the microphone. As soon as the prelude began to sound in their headphones, the little ones couldn't wait to sing. "Pig, you have 2 holes in your nose." She remembered her father's words. She had to take the lead, so she was the first to sing as soon as she heard the voice in her ears. The other children were not willing to fall behind. They scrambled to sing, and it suddenly became chaotic. Yang Yi, who was accompanying them in the recording room, stopped them with a wry smile. She still didn't know that she didn't sing well. The little girl sang a song and was very excited. She looked at her father with a smile, as if she was waiting for her father to praise her. If it was someone else, Yang Yi's tone would probably be reproach and doubt. However, looking at Shi's innocent big eyes and the other children looking at him eagerly, Yang Yi opened his mouth and his voice couldn't help but soften. "Actually, your singing is not bad. It's just that you sang a little too early. It's okay." Yang Yi gave them a thumbs up and smiled. "Look at me. I'll give you a hand signal later. When you see it, you can start singing." "Okay." The little ones happily gave Yang Yi an okay hand signal. After trying twice, under Yang Yi's direction, they could finally start singing at the right time. However, a new problem arose. They couldn't sing in unison. Some children reacted quickly, while others reacted slowly. This caused the voices to be uneven. It couldn't be called a chorus, but a group of demons dancing. However, neither Yang Yi nor Jin Ming had a good solution to this problem. They could only appease the little ones and ask them to sing a little slower. They could only try to catch up. They could only record it over and over again to hone their tacit understanding and strive to record a song in unison. However, this was a test of the children's patience. Even if the song's lyrics were very interesting and the children loved to sing it, they couldn't stand singing a few lines over and over again. After more than 20 minutes, Ding Ling was a little impatient. "Uncle, is it still not enough? Uncle, I don't want to sing anymore." The little girl's grumbling increased a lot. This mood also affected the other children. She had filmed movies and seen scenes of NGs over and over again. She had good patience, but she didn't know how to persuade her friends. Especially at this time, she was the group leader. The little girl remembered that her father had told her to take care of the other children, so she mustered up her courage and said to Ding Ling, "Little Belle, let's sing a little more. Just sing a little more." "No, I don't want to." Ding Ling pouted and said unhappily. After being rejected, she stood helplessly in front of her friends. She didn't know what to do and looked helplessly at her father. Yongyi raised his hand to look at the time. He pondered for a moment and said, "How about this? You must be tired after recording a few times. Take a break first. I'll ask Mr. Mu to take you to the side to drink some drinks and eat some snacks, okay? We'll continue recording later, okay?" This suggestion made the somewhat listless little ones rejuvenated. Even Ding Ling jumped up happily and said, "Okay." Cece looked at the smiles on her friends' faces. She also forgot about her failure just now and laughed happily. Yang Yi had no choice but to open the door with a wry smile and walk out. He asked Mr. Mu to change the children to come in and record first. For some reason, Yang Yi felt very tired when he accompanied the children to record songs. The feeling of mental exhaustion was more serious than the physical exhaustion. And this torment was far from over. Chapter 642. The recording process was very difficult. Not only did it torment Yang Yi and Ji Ning-ming, but it was also not easy for the children in the kindergarten. They had to sing a small section of lyrics dozens of times before they could sing it to the satisfaction of the adults. However, when the final result of the recording came out, the children were so happy that they seemed to have forgotten the hardships of the process when they listened to the songs they sang with their companions. With this sense of accomplishment, they delightedly immersed themselves in the rehearsal of the program and the dance practice. Time always passed quickly. Unknowingly, it was the end of the year, the end of December. Nothing special happened. The only thing that caused a slight sensation in the entertainment circle was Li Manman's announcement that she had joined the High Energy Challenge program produced by Xing Yao and became a star host. Also, in Harbor City, Chan Yijier announced that his long-delayed new album would be released in January next year. These were not considered breaking news. It could only be said that it was the new news of the big stars. As for the small stars, such as Lin Mu An's debut in Harbor City in the middle of this month, or the cast of Fat Agent announcing that the lead actor was Guazi, these small news could not attract people's attention at all. Yang Yi did not pay too much attention to it. He had no time to care about other things because the house was decorated with lanterns and colored banners today. It was very lively. Some of his relatives and friends were invited over, including Shishi's friends and their parents. It was not a holiday, but Tong Tong's 1-month birthday. After the excitement, the guests each took 4 boiled red eggs home and left many toys, flowers, and other gifts for Tong Tong. During this process, the one who had the most fun was Shi. Yang Chongguei and Dong Yue also laughed constantly. After all, it was their grandson's 1-month birthday party, which meant that Tong Tong had grown up a little. Every time a child grew up, his grandparents would be happy. Of course, Yang Yi and Murphy did not like this kind of complicated social interaction. After sending the guests away, they tiredly went upstairs and just wanted to have a moment of peace. Murphy was considered to have completed her confinement period. As her body was recovering well, she had taken off her heavy confinement clothes and changed into a more fashionable outfit. She still couldn't bear to change out of it. Seeing Murphy put the sleeping Tong Tong in his crib, then sit back on the sofa in her stiff woolen coat and snuggle in his arms, Yang Yi smiled and asked her, "Why didn't you change? Change into more comfortable home clothes? There are no outsiders at home now. I'm tired of wearing home clothes." Mo Fei stretched, then hugged Yang Yi's arm and said with a smile, "In the past few months, I haven't been able to dress properly. If I don't dress up, I'm going to become an old woman." "How can you be an old hag?" Yang Yi smiled, pinched Murphy's nose, and said intimately, "Even if you become an old hag, you will still be my old hag." He. You really don't know how to talk. Listening to Yang Yi's mushy words, Murphy felt sweet in her heart, but she smiled and said, "You should say that I won't become an old hag. No matter what, I will always be a great beauty." This was a woman. However, Murphy did not intend to force Yang-yi to say this. She continued, "Hubby, you said that I don't have to stay at home all the time. If I go out, what should I do?" When Murphy said this, her tone was quite excited. However, anyone who had been cooped up at home for a month would be eager to go out and breathe fresh air. "You can do whatever you like." Yang-yi smiled. "Didn't you say that you want to go shopping, buy clothes, travel, and see the world?" These were the grand wishes that Mo Fei made when she was in confinement after giving birth to a child. However, when Yang-yi repeated them for her, Murphy shook her head, sighed, and said, "I can't go shopping. I haven't lost my weight yet. I'm too ugly. Moreover, if I go shopping, what will happen to Bien? He doesn't want to leave me. Don't think about traveling now. Bien is so small. If I take him out, what if he gets sick outside?" Thinking of her responsibility as a mother, Murphy's excitement disappeared. "You can go to the company. There won't be many people in the company, and it's not cold. I can take Bien to see the place where I work. Then I can start dancing and regain my figure. Bien will be very happy to see his mother dancing," Murphy said while counting her fingers. "Let's not talk about that. I think you should be willing to let Bien cry sometimes. Even if I hold him and he cries for a while, and then coax him to agree to let me hold him, it's worth it." Yang-yi felt that he should change some of Murphy's mentality. He wants you to hold him every day, and other relatives can't even hold him. It's not good for Bien to stick to you like this. You said yourself that you can't leave him. You can't do anything even if you want to. Murphy hesitated for a moment. She knew that Yang-yi was right. Finally, she nodded obediently and said, "Okay, but you can't be fierce to Bien. He may be in a difficult situation at first. You have to talk to him more and let him calm down. Don't worry. I have to be by his side. He will be very panicked if he can't see me. Try it slowly," Yang-yi said with a smile. This Wednesday night is Shi's New Year's Eve party performance. She has been talking about it for a long time. Why don't you go and have a look? Yang-yi remembered and said to Murphy, "Dad and Mom will go with you. If you don't go, I will be worried about you at home alone." Last year, Yang-yi and Murphy participated in Shi's performance. If Murphy didn't go this year, Shi might feel very disappointed. "I can't go." Murphy shook her head and said regretfully, "There are many people at the scene, and the auditorium is dark during the performance. This kind of environment will make Bien feel uncomfortable. I'm afraid that it will leave a psychological shadow on him. Moreover, if Bien cries in the middle of the performance, it will disturb Shi's performance." Yang-yi pondered for a moment and said, "Then let's do it like last year. I will ask Brother Lon to help me book a private room. We will have dinner together in there. You can take Bien to play in the private room. After Shi's performance is over, we will come out and meet you. This way, at least you can go there and cheer for Shi. She won't be sad." As the two of them were discussing, Shi's cheerful footsteps sounded. After a while, the little girl appeared at the door of the bedroom with an excited smile. "Mom, is my brother awake? I want to play with him." The little girl threw herself into her mother's arms and giggled. Today, she was with so many friends and played to her heart's content. Her happiness hadn't subsided yet. "You haven't woken up yet. Why don't you play with your grandparents?" Murphy asked. "I don't want to play with my grandparents. Grandpa said that he wanted to watch TV. Then he said that I want to take an early shower, so he told me not to play." She described to her parents with great effort. "Mom, what were you talking about?" "We were talking about your performance on New Year's Day." Murphy said with a smile. "Mom, do you want me to sing for you? I also know how to dance. I learned it from Teacher Shen," the little girl said enthusiastically. She was so excited that she twisted in her mother's arms. She had a strong desire to perform. Today, during Bien's full moon celebration, she and her friends performed pig song in advance for everyone. You can sing for your brother. Murphy touched she's little face and smiled. Chapter 643. Sing for little brother? She was stunned for a moment after hearing her mother's words. After a while, she giggled and said, Mom, you lied to me. Little brother won't. He can't understand my singing. Papa said that there are many things that he doesn't understand. Murphy shook her head and said, Mom didn't lie to you. Although little brother can't understand your singing, he can understand the melody. It's like sometimes when Mom sings, you can't understand the lyrics, but you still think it's good, right? Yang Yi said with a smile, You sing for little brother. He likes it very much now. Maybe when he grows up, he will also like to learn to sing and sing for you. This was the so-called early childhood education. Murphy actually believed in prenatal education and early childhood education. As early as when she was pregnant, she read stories to the baby in her belly and listened to pure classical music. When she was in confinement, she was not idle. When she interacted with Tong Tong, she often hummed to him. Yang Yi didn't understand at first, but Murphy used Shi as an example and said that Shi was so smart because she had been influenced by music since she was a child. Therefore, Yang Yi also joined the ranks of early childhood education for Tong Tong. Shi looked at her parents suspiciously. Tong Tong didn't sleep for too long. When she came out of the shower, Tong Tong had been woken up by Murphy. She asked him to drink milk and played with him. As the little guy gradually grew up, Yang Yi and Murphy couldn't let him sleep after eating. If he slept too much at night, Tong Tong, who was full of energy after a good night's sleep, would make Murphy unable to sleep most of the night. Moreover, it was not good for him to sleep day and night. Seeing that Tong Tong had woken up, she couldn't wait to climb onto the bed. She looked at her brother's silly little face and wondered what he was laughing about. Sister, you're back after your bath. Hey, sister smells good, right? Murphy smiled and hugged Tong Tong so that he could see his sister. I smell good, and so does little brother. She moved her head closer. It was unknown whether she was sniffing Momo or deliberately teasing Momo. Then, she rolled around on the bed happily and said, Of course, Tong Tong was fragrant. At this time, the baby's body still carried a rich milky fragrance. Big sister is also very beautiful. Our son must be handsome in the future, as good-looking as sister. Mo Fei gently shook little rascal's hand. After a while, Murphy asked Shi, who had rolled onto the quilt and was playing with her brother like a dumb worm, Are you going to sing for little brother? Okay. She rolled over and sat up. She said excitedly. The little girl really wanted to perform for her brother. She was sitting cross-legged. Although there was a sweet smile on her little face, her big bright eyes revealed a serious expression. Since it was a performance, she had to give it her all. Murphy gently placed Tong Tong on the bed. She intimately tapped the tip of the little guy's nose and said, Big sister is going to sing for you. Momo, you have to listen carefully. Tong Tong of course didn't understand. He stared fixedly at his mother who was talking to him. His little mouth opened slightly and his chubby little legs curled up. Shi's performance had already begun. Pig, your nose has 2 holes. After singing the first line, she suddenly realized a problem. She couldn't help but giggle. Mom. Little brother also has 2 holes in his nose. She stuck out her little tongue. She raised her eyebrows and smiled at her mother. But little brother isn't a pig. Of course not. What are you thinking? Who has 2 holes in their nose? Steamed bun also has 2 holes. Little Guai also has 2 holes. Murphy said in amusement. But I'm going to sing with little brother. It's like Nan Xiaoyu and the others. We're going to act as little piggy. She gestured as if she was afraid that her little brother would suddenly become little piggy. Although little piggy was very cute, her little brother was still as cute as he was now. It's okay. Little brother doesn't understand. Just don't think too much. Murphy coaxed helplessly. All right, let's continue singing. Tong Tong, who was lying down, had been left out for a while. The little guy raised his hand and put his tender little finger into his mouth to eat. He seemed to be a little impatient from waiting. After a while, she sang the chorus of the song. Pig head, pig brain, pig body, pig EBA. A good baby who is never picky about food. The little girl couldn't help but twist her body along with the song. When they were recording the song, Yang Yi specially remade the accompaniment in order to let the children in kindergarten sing to the right beat. He increased the volume of the drum beat and used an obvious rhythm to make the children sing more orderly and with more energy. Influenced by the cheerful drum beat, she, who had a strong sense of rhythm, began to sway as she sang. Tong Tong indeed didn't understand the meaning of the lyrics, and perhaps he couldn't feel the charm of his sister's voice. However, his eyesight was still developing, so he could see his sisters sway and smile. The little guy seemed to be influenced by her. The little guy didn't even care about eating his hand. His little hand slipped out of his mouth and moved rhythmically with his other little hand. This reaction wasn't obvious enough. When she sang the second time, when she sang, "You still have snot on your nose when you have a cold," Shishi's cute pronunciation at the end was like a feather falling on one end of a scale. Tong Tong's lips curled up slightly and he grinned. Mom. Little brother is smiling. She, who had been watching her little brother sing, was overjoyed. She didn't even wait until he finished singing and turned to look at her mother excitedly. Tong Tong knew how to smile. It was different from the unintentional expressions he used to have. Recently, he had gradually developed the ability to smile, especially when he was in his mother's arms. After drinking milk to his heart's content, and then feeling a strong sense of love from his mother's coaxing, the little guy would grin and express his emotions with a smile. Yes. Little brother really likes your singing. Did you see that? Murphy was also very happy because other people couldn't make Tong Tong smile so easily. Yang Yi had once tried his best to make Tong Tong smile, but he still couldn't make Tong Tong smile. He just blinked his eyes and watched him jump around, which made him feel very frustrated as a father. Yang Yi, who had just come out of the bathroom, heard the commotion. He ran over in surprise and asked, What? I sang for little brother, and then he smiled. She said happily to her father. Continue singing. Let me see. Yang Yi urged his daughter. After a while, Shi's solo turned into a duet with her father. Yang Yi basically didn't know how to sing this song. He even let Jin Yingming teach him in the recording studio because he felt that this song was too childish and difficult to sing. This was also why he wrote it for children to sing. But at this time, how could Yang Yi think so much? He followed Shi and hummed softly to Tong Tong, who was lying on the bed, Pig, your tail is curly and curly. It turns out that you can't leave it even when you run and jump. Tong Tong seemed to really like it. His eyes were curved, and he had a cute smile on his face. He was so happy that he couldn't stop. E. He even made a few simple syllables. I think he's calling my name. Yang Yi laughed shamelessly. E. Murphy, who was next to him, was amused by his shamelessness. She hugged Shi and laughed until she was convulsing. Chapter 644. Yang Yi was not someone who liked to go back on his words. He had promised Yun Yongfeng that he would come up with his program proposal before the end of the month. He had indeed taken the time to write the proposal amidst his busy schedule of taking care of his wife and children. On the 29th of December, Yang Yi, Yun Yongfeng, and two more experienced program directors from China Star Productions met in the small building of the Hua Yi Brothers Management Company and Phoebe Studio. This is Director Yen Tao, the former main director of High Energy Challenge. This is Director Ran Min, the assistant director of Life Transformations. They actually do the same thing as Director Hu. They used to have a division of labor and many episodes were directed by Director Ran alone. Yun Yongfeng introduced to Yang Yi. Yen Tao was a tall middle-aged man with a clean-shaven crew cut. He looked calm and composed. Ran Min was a female director who should be around 40 years old. She was not tall and did not look outstanding, but she looked gentler, like a big sister next door. Actually, when Yoon Young-fong introduced Ran Min, he looked a little awkward because the director who he mentioned, who was the main director of Life Transformations, had resigned more than a week ago. Glorious Star Productions was not to be trifled with. They had poached Hu Shang with a high salary to direct the more important High Energy Challenge. Of course, Glorious Star Productions had wanted to poach Yen Tao in the beginning, but Yen Tao did not accept their olive branch because Glorious Star Productions would not accept anyone else from China Star Productions. Yen Tao could not let go of the team he had worked with for so long. However, it was obvious that Hu Shang being poached was a huge loss to China Star Productions despite the compensation for the breach of contract. Yoon Young-fong felt that he had not done well and had embarrassed Yang-yi. Director Yen, Director Ren, hello. Yang-yi did not dwell on these issues but asked everyone to sit down and talk. Actually, I've watched all of your programs. Whether it's High Energy Challenge or Life Transformations, I've watched them all. I've even watched the few episodes of Life Transformations that director Ran filmed. They're really good. Yang-yi said with a smile, let's not talk about the past. Today, we're mainly talking about our new China Star Productions, the first program we're going to produce. Getting to the point so quickly. Yen Tao and Ren Min were a little surprised, but they also liked this kind of swift and decisive boss. They put down some contempt in their eyes and seriously looked at Yang-yi. Ran Lien even took out a notebook and prepared to record it. This program requires the two of you to work together. This is not to let you compete for the position of executive director, but to see the two of you complement each other in your respective areas of expertise and make our program a success. Yang-yi said with a smile. Yang-yi's words confused Yen Tao and Ran Min. However, Yang-yi had already signaled Mo Xiaowan to distribute the printed program plans. They didn't have time to question him and looked at Yang-yi's program proposal first. Yoon Young-fong received one as well. When he saw it, he could not help exclaiming, "Limit challenge?" Although Yang-yi was aware of his impoliteness and had already lowered his voice, he still looked at Yang-yi in surprise. Limit challenge? What did that mean? Was he trying to compete with Starlight Productions? Since he wanted to create an limit challenge, why did he sell High Ability Challenge? Yang-yi knew that they would have such a reaction, so he raised his head slightly and said, "Look carefully, this is a different program from High Energy Challenge." Why was it called Limit Challenge? Actually, Yang-yi was still a little conflicted. He didn't know that this program should be called Limit Challenge. It was better to call it Run, Brother. The structure of the program was similar to Limit Challenge, but it incorporated some attractive elements of Run, Brother. After all, there were no running men in this world. There was no reason for him to not add games or routines like shiatsu, brand tearing, spy, double spy, and so on into Limit Challenge. Of course, Yang-yi did not want to change the specialty of chicken strips. Games like shiatsu or brand tearing that were repeatedly played in Running Men might only be played once in chicken strips. Every episode had different game content, different scripts, and plots. Only then could this variety show continue to flourish. It was also because the overall structure came from the Limit Challenge that Yang-yi decided to name the show the Limit Challenge. Obviously, this would cause misunderstandings. For example, Yoon Young-feng's reaction now would also cause some disputes, such as the dissatisfaction of Starlight Productions. However, Yang-yi did not care about these. If they were dissatisfied, so be it. Come and bite me. Yen Tao and Ran Min, who were watching Yang-yi's plan seriously, were deeply attracted by Yang-yi's description. Especially towards the end, Yang-yi had even written down the process of the program in words. With Yang-yi's writing skills of adapting so many books, this program was naturally written by him beautifully. As Yen Tao and Ran Min watched, they felt as if they were there, vivid scenes appearing before their eyes. For example, in a hotel room, a male artist who was sleeping shirtless was woken up. He faced the camera with sleepy eyes and began to choose the room number of the next artist he wanted to wake up. It felt like the program had not been filmed yet, but they felt like they were already participating in it. Yang-yi saw that they had finished watching one after another and smiled, asking, "How is it?" "My plan is good," isn't it? Yen Tao's expression was a little colorful. One moment he was emotional, the next he shook his head with a bitter smile. In the end, it was still him who was the judge. He said with a bitter smile, "Boss Yang. Call me Yang E. And Teacher Yun, you can call me Yang E too. Calling me boss is too distant." Yang E waved his hand. Yang E. Yen Tao also felt that it was awkward to call him Boss Yang. After all, he was much older than Yang E. He then said, "To be honest, your planning format is terrible. If it was someone else, I might not even want to look at it." Was this a criticism? Yang E was a little embarrassed. He had never learned how to write a program, so he was completely free to express himself. "However, it's fortunate that I watched it. Otherwise, I would have really missed out on a good program. I'm also very glad that I didn't leave China Star Productions and had the chance to participate in such an interesting program production." Yen Tao's tone changed. It sounded like he was trying to flatter Yun Yang, but in reality, he was really excited as he said, "I think your program is tens of times, no, 10,000 times more interesting than High Ability Challenge. Besides, you've written it in great detail. I believe that as long as we execute it seriously, we'll definitely be able to produce such an interesting program." Director Yen is a little excited, but I think Director Yen is right. From the perspective of an ordinary audience, if this program is filmed, I'll definitely watch it. I won't miss a single episode, Yun Yang said emotionally. He was a little ashamed of his doubts just now. Ran Lien nodded lightly. She was still thinking about what she wanted to say. She had to say something different to gain the attention of the leader. Yang E breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "I'm relieved to be able to gain your recognition." Whether it was Yen Tao, the director of the variety show, or Yun Yang Feng, who was in charge of operations and knew the audience's needs the most, they were all professionals. They were so excited just from looking at a program proposal, or was it because the program was originally good and its creativity was invincible? Yang E had also tried his best to describe the first episode of the Limit Challenge as well as many backup game ideas for them to see. This was obviously enough for them to see the potential of the program. Ren Jing finally understood. She raised her head and said seriously, "Yang E, I think the future selling point of this program isn't just the creativity of these games. It's also the choice of the 6 celebrity hosts. We must choose celebrities with distinct personalities, smart and quick-witted, and can handle the situation. It doesn't matter if they're big shots or not, they must meet the needs of our program. Besides, there are 6 of them, 5 men and 1 woman. They must all have different personalities." Chapter 645. Hearing Ren Min say that the show needed 6 hosts, 5 men and 1 woman, Emo Xiaozhuan's expression was a little strange. She wanted to say something but stopped herself. However, she felt that this was not the right occasion, so she held back for the time being. Yang E nodded approvingly at Ren Min and said, "You're right. In addition to what you said, I also hope to add an important condition to the selection of these 6 hosts. They have to be grounded." Grounded? Yen Tao and the others could not help but repeat. They were not unfamiliar with this term, but they were a little surprised that Yang E would use it. "That's right. Our show has to pursue extreme realism. It has to be a true reality show. This requires everyone to show their true side without any scruples. They don't care if they make a fool of themselves, make mistakes, or even fall and get injured." Yang E said solemnly. "Of course, we have to give everyone the greatest protection behind the scenes. We have to do our best to not let them get hurt or have any situations that no one wants to see happen." Yang Yi smiled, but his tone did not relax. "However, all the hosts, including the guests, need to throw away the burden of being an idol and do their best to win instead of putting on a show of challenge for the audience. Believe me, the audience will not be fooled by you." Ran Min nodded. Clearly, she agreed with Yang Yi's statement. This was because the viewership ratings of Life's Metamorphosis had once experienced a period of decline. It was because they were too focused on the effects of the program and fabricated some dramatic plots that were seen through by the audience. Even if it's a female host, do we have to do the same? Yen Tao asked. That's right. She's not allowed to be shy. If it doesn't work, we might as well not use a female host. All 6 hosts are men, Yang Yi said. The female host we choose also has to be grounded. The reason why Yang Yi changed the men gang of chicken strips to a Running Man model was that he wanted to add some variables to the show. After all, women were different from men. No matter how manly she was still a woman. How she handled the relationship with the other hosts and how she faced high-intensity challenges would give the show a lot of interesting points to watch. Of course, the premise was that the female host had to be as daring as Song Jixiao, not like, that's right. The audience wants to see the real side of celebrities. Besides, to be honest, the audience who watch variety shows would prefer the down-to-earth celebrities like Elder Yang. Yang Yi, you said, Yun Yongfeng said with a smile. Yun Yongfeng was in charge of the operations department. He was familiar with the audience's preferences, so his words had a certain degree of credibility. Yen Tao had no objections. Yang Yi continued, the reason why I need Director Yen and Director Ran to work together is because our program isn't as simple as a challenge. It also has a competitive aspect to it. I believe that this is something Director Yen is good at. In addition, it also includes a lot of human nature and emotional interactions. For example, the simplest brotherhood, the camaraderie during an alliance, or some interesting intrigue. Yang Yi turned to look at Ren Min and said, I've watched a lot of Director Ren's programs, especially the few episodes that you've directed independently. To be honest, I'm surprised by Director Ren's meticulousness in how he captured expressions, shot the details, and edited them together to make some of the plots more emotional. Therefore, our limit challenge needs Director Yan's overall control, rhythm, and Director Ren's handling of the details and emotions. Both of you are very important. Yang Yi emphasized these because he did not want there to be any gap between the 2 main directors of a program due to fighting. Yen Tao and Ran Min exchanged a look and said to Yang Yi, you can rest assured about this. We have our own professional ethics, we won't be careless in our work. Back to the program itself, Yen Tao and Ran Min asked Yang Yi about some details of the program. Yang Yi answered everything he knew. However, there was a limit to what he could do. After all, Yang Yi didn't watch every episode of those variety shows in his previous life. These weren't his favorites. He only watched a few episodes occasionally. Therefore, Yang Yi could only provide them with a direction. As for the rest, whether it was the theme of each episode, the plot, or the gameplay of each challenge game, it all needed to be conceived by them and the scriptwriters behind them. Of course, if Yang Yi thought of everything by himself, then why would he spend so much money to buy them back? To raise them, of course they had to create value for Yang Yi. Yang Yi felt that this meeting was about to end, so he asked, do you have any other questions? Ren Min hesitated and said, about the 6 permanent hosts, Yang Yi, I don't know if you have any ideas? These 6 people can't be professional hosts because, to be honest, a professional host would destroy the fairness of the game to a certain extent. He might be too smooth in controlling the situation and leave a lot of traces, but we'll try our best to pursue authenticity, Yang Yi said. I'll propose 2 candidates first. You guys can see if they're suitable. If there are any questions, we can discuss them together. Don't worry about anything. The first candidate I think is suitable is Zhu Jie. Yang Yi said. When Yang Yi said this, he was not sure about Yen Tao and the others' reaction. But to Yang Yi's surprise, whether it was Yen Tao or Ren Min, they all nodded in agreement. Zhu Jie is not bad. He is not a professional host, but he has the potential to be a host. Yen Tao said. Ren Min also said, Zhu Jie's overall performance is not bad. I have seen some of his programs. He knows how to help the guests fight for the screen time. This is a very good trait. Because of the accident of the original boss of China Star Production, although the 2 of them had not directed a program for half a year, they still paid attention to domestic and foreign variety shows. They even knew Zhu Jie so well. Having obtained their approval, Yang Yi also felt much more at ease. The other candidate is Guazi. Maybe you are not familiar with him. He is the male lead of the popular fairy tale micro-movie at the beginning of this year. He has another movie coming out next year. Yang Yi said. I have seen that micro-movie, but the Ah Guang you mentioned, isn't he a very introverted person? Ren Min asked, puzzled. Of course not. He is just acting. In real life, he is actually a very talkative person. His personality is also very funny. He is the joker among his friends. Yang Yi laughed. He chose Guazi, of course, because he wanted to keep the goodies within the family. But most importantly, it was because Guazi's personality was indeed suitable for variety shows. Recently, Ding Xiang said that Guazi was going to lose weight. It was a good opportunity for him to give it a try and let him realize the importance and urgency of losing weight. However, Yen Tao and Ran Min looked at each other and did not say anything. This was obviously a backdoor entry. They did not know Yang Yi's personality. Even if Yang Yi said that they should not have any concerns about their opinions, they did not dare to go against Yang Yi and not let Guazi come. Yang Yi saw Yen Tao and Ran Min's silent look and guessed their thoughts. He said, "It is normal that you don't know him well. How about this? I will let Guazi come over tomorrow. You can test him personally. Then, after the Spring Festival, he will go to Shanghai. You can try with him in Shanghai. If it is really not suitable, we will change people." Yen Tao and Ran Lien both breathed a sigh of relief and agreed to Yang Yi's arrangement. There is one more candidate. Yun Yongfeng observed their expressions and felt that he had to speak up for Yang Yi. I think that among the 5 men and 1 woman, can we confirm another person? What about Murphy? If she is the permanent host of the variety show, she will definitely help us pull in a lot of viewership ratings. Mo Xiaozhuan's expression was even more peculiar. Yang Yi had actually spoken her mind. Mo Xiaowan was also wondering if Murphy was included in Yang Yi's request for the 5 men and 1 woman. Was this variety show just to pave the way for Murphy's comeback? However, Yang Yi shook his head with a smile. Chapter 646. Murphy, who was being discussed by everyone, was actually just next door. She was holding Tong Tong and standing in the middle of the employees with a smile. The cute Tong Tong naturally attracted a lot of female fans. Xiao Ai and 5 or 6 other female employees surrounded Tong Tong and Murphy, trying to tease Tong Tong. Is he still drinking breast milk? Did you give him any supplementary food? He's only 1 month old, but he must be full of curiosity about this world. Look at his eyes, they're so cute. Sister Fei, does your mother-in-law help take care of him? You can't be too arrogant. It's normal for children to cry. You have to let him familiarize himself with other family members. Perhaps it was due to their maternal instincts, but all the female employees had no resistance to such a small baby. Although other than Xiao Ai, they were not very familiar with the boss, Murphy. At this time, they all acted like they had been friends with Murphy for many years. They enthusiastically talked to Murphy about parenting. Of course, the female employees who had not given birth yet, such as Xiao Ai, could not get a word in, but it did not matter. She still enjoyed teasing Tong Tong. However, Tong Tong seemed a little cold. So many beautiful women were teasing him, and they were even holding brightly colored keychains to attract his attention. However, Tong Tong just rolled his eyes curiously, and he did not have any intention of laughing at all. His mouth moved, but the little guy only yawned. After yawning, his eyes became lazy, as if he was saying, "Sisters, I'm going to sleep." But it did not matter. Even if Tong Tong did not cooperate, it could not stop the sisters from liking him. Xiao Ai said enviously, "He's so cute. Look at his mouth when he opens it. He's cute even without teeth. My heart is about to melt." A few married women next to her took the opportunity to tease her. "Manager AI, your heart is melting. Hurry up and have a baby. What are you waiting for?" Little Momo seemed to have been startled by their voices. Her drooping eyelids opened again, and her round black eyes looked at these big sisters in confusion. However, not long after, sleepiness attacked her once again. Murphy didn't know that she had been mistaken for the hostess of Yang Yi's new program, Chicken Strips. In fact, if Yang Yi insisted on placing Murphy in, Yen Tao and Ran Lien couldn't say anything. This was because Yang Yi was their big boss, and Murphy was their lady boss. Although the big boss was the one who paid them, the lady boss was always the boss. How could they object when the lady boss wanted to appear on their show? They might question it, but they definitely wouldn't dare to go against Yang Yi. Whether it was Yen Tao or Ran Min, they didn't have the qualifications to do so, unless they fought to the same height as Chen Fengchen. Moreover, when they heard that the female host was Murphy, they began to find excuses to comfort themselves. At least, Mo Fei was also a big star with a huge fan base. Her participation could bring higher ratings to the show, which was a good thing. However, they misunderstood. Yang Yi never wanted Murphy to be the hostess of the new Chicken Strips. In fact, he didn't even want Murphy to appear on the program as a guest. Because 3-year-old Mo was delicate and weak, it was easy to push her down. Murphy can't do it. Yang Yi shook his head and said, I said that this program must be done well. All the hosts must be down-to-earth and brave. Murphy can't do that. Even if she has the courage, she doesn't have the ability. Who said she doesn't have the ability? Mo Xiaowan said unhappily. Really, I know her the best. If you ask her to run 100 meters, she'll be so tired that she'll pant. If you ask her to compete with the other 5 hosts and even the future celebrity guests, how can she compete? Yang Yi didn't mention one thing, which was that Murphy was too naive. If she really had to fight with those old foxes, she wouldn't even know how she lost. Yang Yi, this way, the requirements for the female host are very high. Ran Min also realized this problem and said, if there's no support, a female artist generally can't compete with a male artist, right? It's her ability to win the sympathy of other men, but our program group won't give any favoritism to the female host. We also don't want to see a vase that only knows how to act coquettishly. It's best if she can establish the image of a tough woman. Yang Yi said. Tough woman? No one had seen this term before, but when Yang Yi said it, everyone understood and laughed. Ran Min's eyes lit up and he quickly recorded this term. It would definitely be useful in the program in the future. To establish a tough woman, we have to consider the female artist's personality. Yang Yi, you said that she has to be realistic, which means that she has to be more outgoing, forthright, not bothered by trifles, and not afraid of hardships. Ran Min said and looked a little troubled. It's not easy to find a female artist like that. Wasn't that right? Most of the female artists in the entertainment industry, regardless of whether they really look the same or not, were either as gentle as jade or as delicate as fragile goods. However, it was undeniable that this was the type that most men liked. Before the concept of a tough woman became popular, there were very few female artists who were tough. Yang Yi, you can consider Yang Huan. Mo Xiaowan couldn't stand it anymore. She was different from Yang Yi. She was more selfish. It was such a good program, so she definitely had to use her own artist. Moreover, Yang Huan was so suitable. Don't be shy about recommending Yang Huan just because she's your sister. Yang Huan's personality is just like what director Ren said. She's forthright and doesn't care about trifles. I also believe that she's not afraid of hardships. Most importantly, if you want a female artist who dares and can compete with male artists, Yang Huan can do it. She's been practicing martial arts since she was a child. She's very skilled and ordinary men can't beat her. Yang Yi knew that Mo Xiaowan was saying this for Yen Tao and Ran Min. Huan isn't suitable, is she? Yang Yi frowned and said, she's not even a celebrity. She's never acted in a movie before. She's never sung either. To be honest, Yang Yi also wanted Yang Huan, but she wasn't qualified. Mo Xiaowan looked at Yang Yi strangely. She hesitated and said, who said that Yang Huan hasn't acted before? She just didn't tell you. Didn't you notice that Yang Huan has been very busy recently? Ding Xiang was the one who answered the phone. She went to the Jiangnan military region and is filming Drawing Sword with director Chan Fengchen. Mo Xiaowan, the head of internal affairs, naturally knew about Yang Huan's filming. She even helped arrange for a driver to pick Ding Xiong up in case she was too busy with classes and final exams. Of course, she also helped to hide it from Yang Yi. However, this was a rare opportunity. Mo Xiaowan didn't care about leaking the secret because she wanted to help Yang Huan. Yang Yi looked at Mo Xiaowan in surprise, but before he could speak, Yen Tao asked, "She's filming Drawing Sword? What role is Yang Huan playing?" It was hard to tell that Yen Tao was a fan of Drawing Sword. "She's playing Xiuqin." Mo Xiaowan laughed. Xiuqin. The image of a strong woman suddenly appeared in Yen Tao's mind. Yang Yi's face darkened and said, "Nonsense. Why is Director Chen doing the same? Just because she's my sister, he's letting her play Xiuqin?" Xiuqin was a very important supporting actress. If she didn't do well, the show would be ruined. "Yang Yi, you're underestimating your sister," Mo Xiaowan said proudly. Huan went to the audition because Ding Xiang helped her get the chance. Director Chen didn't recognize Huan until the end of the audition. She got the role with her own efforts. Through their conversation, Yen Tao and Ran Lian had a better understanding of Yang Huan. Although Yang Huan was still inexperienced, Yen Tao and Ran Lian were both very curious about Yang Huan according to Mo Xiaojuan's description of a person who was good at fighting and had a compatible personality. If that's the case, why don't we let Yang Huan try it first? Who knows, she might surprise us. Yen Tao, a fan of Drawing Sword, could not help but say. Really? Yang Yi hesitated for a moment. He was actually very tempted. After all, it was a good opportunity for Yang Huan. Let her meet the other hosts and try it out. Or, record the first episode and see how it goes. Ran Lian also said, if the results are good, I think we don't have to care about her popularity. After all, our show doesn't need celebrity effects, but authenticity. Alright, that's settled then. Take a look at who the other hosts are. Yang Yi no longer pretended to refuse and waved his hand. It was as if a painting was unfurled. However, it was also true. From that day onward, the world's new limit challenge would set sail. Chapter 647. Putting aside the fact that Yang Huan had snuck into the set behind Yang Yi's back, Yang Yi did not have time to beat this little girl up, because Shishi's New Year's Day performance was coming up. On the last night of the year, Yang Yi brought his family to the same hotel as last year. Not only Yang Yi and Murphy, but also Yang Chongguei and Dong Yue were dressed very fashionably. When they arrived at the private room, they took off their thick coats. Grandpa Shen was wearing a Chinese long-sleeved shirt with a standing collar, which was popular in their era. The diagonal buttons were tightly buttoned and looked very spirited. The navy blue color matched with the white scarf around his neck, which was similar to Hada's, made him look like a big boss from the old Shanghai. If he held the felt top hat that was hanging on the hanger together with his coat, he would look even more like one. It was also the first time that Dong Yue was dressed so formally. Of course, she could not dress in bright colors like Zhou Mingyu, who did not want to admit that she was old. Grandpa Shen's dress was similar to that of an ordinary old person, but the workmanship of the dress was more delicate. In the elegant brown texture, there was a deeper red outline of a maple leaf pattern, which made the solemn dress look lively and lively. Of course, it was not just the adults. Even Tong Tong was dressed up. He was wearing a cute baby panda costume and was being held in his mother's swaddling clothes. He looked like a fashionable baby. With such a big lineup, they were, of course, cheering for Shishi's family and friends. However, Shishi was wearing a prop costume today. It was a slightly round pink dress with a small curly tail. Later, I'll wear a pig's nose and big ears. Then I'll look like a pig. But Mr. Mu said that we can only wear them after dinner. The little girl gestured with her hands beside her ears and happily explained her costume to her grandparents. Why do you have to act as a pig? Yang Chongguei was a little unhappy. Can't you act as a horse? Or a human? Because a pig is super cute. Cough cough. She pressed her little nose up and snorted like a pig, but she was amused by herself. She giggled and twisted around. In the end, she fell into her father's arms. She didn't know how fun it was. Pigs don't cry like that. Dong Yue was amused. Her grandmother, who was very experienced in feeding pigs, showed her granddaughter how to make a pig sound. Squeak squeak, squeak squeak. He had to admit that his imitation was quite good. It was true that there were experts among the people. She was attracted by her grandmother's voice. The little girl looked at her grandmother with admiration and said, "Grandma, you're really amazing." Yang Yi comforted Yang Chongguei and said with a smile, "Dad, don't worry about these things. In the eyes of Shi and the other children, pigs are cute. Moreover, there are many people in the city who treat pigs as pets. They are clean and don't look bad at all." Yang Chongguei shook his head. He didn't understand what these young people were thinking. However, Shi remembered what she hadn't finished speaking. She jumped out of her father's arms and ran to the sofa where her grandfather was sitting. She shook her grandfather's arm and pestered him. "Grandpa, do you know why I'm not wearing a pig's nose now?" Yang Chongguei was pestered by his granddaughter. He didn't have the time to complain about those young people. His eyes were full of kindness and he asked, "Why?" Grandpa, I already told you." She was overjoyed. She hugged her grandfather's arm and laughed. "Because I can't eat if I'm wearing a pig's nose." "That's not a big deal." Yang Chongguei thought that she was talking about something important. He couldn't help but shake his head gently. However, he was comforted by Shi's innocent look and smiled. Just like last year, Lan Hao Kai and Wu Jingjing also came to find Yang Yi. They were going to watch the children's performance together later. "Old master, you're dressed so well." When Lan Hao Kai saw Yang Chongguei, he couldn't help but praise him. One word, handsome. How could Yang Chongguei be complacent with the praise of the big fatty? In any case, the old man was someone who had seen big scenes. He stroked his white beard and nodded lightly at the other party. However, he had a carefree and unperturbed look on his face. Lan Hao Kai felt that the old man was very charming. Wasn't an otherworldly master supposed to be unfathomable? Lan Hao Kai sighed in admiration. "Old master, look at your aura. You're definitely a master of a generation. I don't feel like any master in those movies. Only our old man is imposing enough. Just sitting here makes people feel that you're unfathomable." "That's enough, Brother Lon. If we continue to flatter each other like this, the food will get cold." Yang Yi smiled and picked up food for Shi and Lon Xin, who were already sitting together and chatting about little girls. Lon Kai sat down and said, "I'm not bragging, and I'm not flattering the old man. I just think that the old man's clothes are not bad. Where did you buy it for him?" "That's right." Lan Hao Kai was moved. He felt that he should also get a set of clothes like this to show off. "You want it too? It's the same place. I'll get the old tailor to make it. You can go to him." Yang Yi shook his head helplessly. Today's private room was livelier than last year. Not only were there more Yang Chongguei and Dong Yue, but in the middle of the meal, Lu Weisha and her parents also came to visit after finding out that Shi and Yang Yi were in the private room. Yang Yi and David were closer. David often went to Yang Yi's coffee shop. It didn't matter if Yang Yi wasn't there because he went there for coffee. However, if Yang Yi was there, the two of them would have the chance to chat about anything. David said that Yang Yi was one of the few knowledgeable people in China. Therefore, he felt that Yang Yi was very congenial. Lu Weisha's mother, Maria, met Murphy for the first time. The two of them communicated in English. They mainly talked about their children, especially Tong Tong. Maria was very interested in the cute Tong Tong in Murphy's arms. She reached out and made a hugging motion. She asked Murphy, "Can I hug him? This is really a cute little boy." Murphy regretfully told her that Tong Tong was a little shy. Other than his mother's embrace, he would cry in other people's embrace. Yang Chongguei actually knew a little English, but he had stayed in the countryside for decades and had forgotten most of it. Especially since Murphy and Maria spoke faster, the old man couldn't understand them at all. It didn't matter if he didn't understand. However, when the foreign woman made a gesture of wanting to hug his grandson, the old man couldn't help but be vigilant. Other people didn't have much of a problem, but foreigners? The old man was on guard. What are they talking about? Yang Chongguei couldn't help but mutter. Cici was sitting beside Grandpa and talking to Lu Weisha and Lan Xian. Grandpa's words drifted into the little girl's ears. Cici glanced at Grandpa and followed his gaze to look at her mother and Lu Weisha's mother. This little girl was so warm-hearted. How could she leave her grandfather to the side and let him face the problem alone? After listening for a while, she translated for her grandfather. Grandpa, Lu Weisha's mom told my mom that Tong Tong cries and that everyone doesn't like hugging him because something is wrong with him. Oh, I don't know. Lu Weisha, do you know what your mom said? She tried her best to translate for her grandfather, but her vocabulary was limited. She didn't know how to translate and she didn't understand some of the words. Lu Weisha saw that her friend was in a difficult position and enthusiastically helped her. I'll go and ask. Lu Weisha used Chinese. After asking for a while, she ran back happily. She stood beside Shi and said to Shi's grandfather, "My mother said that Tong Tong cries because he's scared and needs to use soother." What is soother? Shi asked in confusion. Yes, what is soother? Lu Weisha didn't know how to explain it in Chinese. She looked a little anxious and explained with gestures, it's this, in the mouth. But her description made everyone even more confused. Yang Chongguei had a good impression of Lu Weisha when he heard her speak Chinese. Besides, she was a child, so he didn't mind too much. Now that he saw Lu Weisha's enthusiastic and embarrassed look, he waved his hand and said, "Good girl, don't say any more. It's okay." But the old man underestimated the children's thirst for knowledge. Shi jumped down from the chair and ran to her father. She tugged at her father's clothes and asked, "Papa, what is soother?" Yang Yi was also paying attention to the conversation between Murphy and the others. When he heard his daughter's question, he smiled and touched Shi's little head. "It's a pacifier. Your Auntie Maria introduced it to your mother. She said that if Tong Tong bites it, he won't be too scared and Papa can hug him." Chapter 648. The performance of the older children was arranged to be in the middle. As Yang Yi was worried about Murphy and Tong Tong, he went out before Shi's performance. He accompanied Murphy for a few minutes before returning. Of course, since it was on the way, Yang Yi went backstage to cheer Shi and the other children on. Although he was only Shi's father, he was also very popular with the other children. He was like an idol to the other children. One sentence from him was more effective than several sentences from Teacher Mu. "Daddy, Daddy, did you bring your camera?" Shi finally had a chance to talk to her father. She asked in a muffled voice with a pig's nose. She was talking about her own camera. Yang Yi had given it to her to take pictures of the little fish for her homework. By the way, Yang Yi was worried that Shi would be worried about those little fish after they died. Therefore, he persuaded Shi to send them to Lan Xian's big fish tank to be raised together. As for how many of them were still alive, Yang Yi did not know. He only knew that poor Shi had sent people to buy fish to replenish the aquarium tank. Last night, the little girl mysteriously came to look for her father with her camera. She asked her father to take her camera to watch her performance and take pictures of her. "I want to show it to my brother. He doesn't understand it yet. He'll be able to see it when he grows up." Yang Yi did not forget how serious Shi was when she said these words to him. He was shocked by his daughter's intelligence that sometimes surpassed that of other children her age. It was not a big deal to know how to take pictures. However, it was not easy for a 5.5-year-old girl to be able to think about things so far in the future. Yang Yi smiled and patted his daughter's head as he said, "Yes, I brought it. I'll let your grandpa hold it for you. Don't worry. I also brought a big camera that can record videos." Your mother can also watch your performance when the time comes. She was relieved and smiled. Her big eyes were full of ripples when she smiled. Under the light, it was as beautiful as the reflection of small stars in a rippling lake. After a while, Yang Yi welcomed Shi's performance in the audience. After the host, Teacher Shen, announced the performance, a tall foreign girl with blonde hair and blue eyes rushed onto the stage after a round of applause. She was wearing a princess dress. The weather was so cold, and she had a thick fur coat on her shoulders. Of course, it was Lu Weisha. Her performance was very simple. She looked around in confusion, as if she had lost her way. A long time ago, there was a princess who went to the forest to play, but she got lost. Behind the scenes, a loud and clear voice was reading the background of the story. At this time, Lan Zhou Kai, who was sitting next to Yang Yi, excitedly introduced the voice to the people next to him. He even bypassed Yang Yi and introduced the voice to Yang Yi, who was sitting next to Yang Yi. "This is my daughter." That's right. People who were familiar with the voice could tell that the voice behind the scenes was the loud voice of Lan Xin. Lan Xin was not a good dancer, and she would be very nervous after going on stage. However, she was very comfortable with this dubbing job. All she had to do was to repeat Teacher Mu's words aloud and she would be fine. At this time, an explorer appeared. Wang Shijuan, who was dressed like a soldier, appeared on the stage. Then, it was the story of the explorer inviting the curious princess to explore the legendary Piglet Kingdom in the forest. On the way, they met a big-tailed squirrel, a simple and honest bear, and a wild duck that could talk. The story passed quickly. These animals all joined their team. Everyone went to the Piglet Kingdom together and saw many cute piglets. There was a little piglet like Shi, who wore a pink dress over her piglet costume. There was also a little piglet brother who wore a suit over his piglet costume. "You are all so cute." Lu Weisha, who was the princess, picked up the microphone and said in her still shaky Chinese, "So this is what a piglet looks like." Then, the music started. First, there was a light and pleasant prelude accompanied by a soft waist drum sound. All the children began to dance. Shi and Yang Luoqi, the two best dancers, of course, wore piglet costumes and led the dance. The dance was not complicated. In fact, it could even be said to be simple. At the beginning of the prelude, the children just followed the rhythm and ran to their positions. During this time, Chen Shiyun even ran to the wrong position because she was nervous. However, this was normal. The children's performance could not be perfect. The teachers did not come up to spoil the fun and let them jump off the stage. "Pig, you have 2 holes in your nose." A young child's voice came from the sound system. This song really lifted the spirits of the parents who were still a little confused. The children on the stage raised their small hands and made an OK gesture. 2 small hands clasped around their noses and gestured. When you have a cold, you still have snot and nyo. These interesting lyrics, accompanied by the children's gestures, added a lot of fun. Without this song, Shi and the others' performance would be ordinary. However, with this song that had never appeared before and was full of childlike interest, made the program fun. It was as if the princess was singing and describing the piglets. "Pig, you have dark eyes." The children gestured around their eyes with their fingers. Yang Chongguei, who was beside him, was beaming with joy. The old man stared at his granddaughter with a smile. The little girl's cute dance made the old man forget that he did not like Shi acting as a pig. Now, his mind was full of the idea that this little pig was his granddaughter and that she danced beautifully. The little girl and her friends danced with all their might. Although it was simple, there were many movements and they had to be memorized. Fortunately, Shi had a good memory and the dance matched the lyrics very well. Even so, the little girl was still a little nervous. Her little face was tense. Although she had a pig's nose, Yang Yi could still see that. His heart ached. Of course, although Yang Yi and Ji Ningming helped the children make the recording of this song very pleasant, there were still some flaws. For example, the following line, "Looking and looking, I can't see the end of it." None of the children could sing well. She and the others could not sing the high notes at this point. Now, in the recording, they forcefully raised their voices but quickly lost their energy. Even if Yang Yi and the others tried their best, they could not do it. From the sound system, anyone could tell that the children could not sing the high notes. However, the adults did not care at all. Instead, there was some kind laughter and applause for the children's hard work. Sometimes, flaws were also a kind of beauty. Yang Yi felt uncomfortable listening to it, but when he saw the parents' reaction, he was slightly relieved. At that time, Jin Ming had advised him to keep this question. It would be more realistic. Weren't all children like this when they sang? It wasn't just the line just now. The little ones couldn't continue singing that part of the high note, so running and jumping can't be separated from it. The persistence in their singing made people unable to help but think of their hard work. The flaws couldn't obscure the beauty of the song. The interesting nature of the song made the program very enjoyable for the parents. Pig's head, pig's brain, pig's body, pig's tail. Good children who are never picky about food. There was a strong rhythm to the song. Coupled with the cute way the children turned their backs and shook their buttocks, it really made people want to go up and shake their buttocks. In the middle of the performance, the brisk rhythm had already made the audience happy. The children in the audience could not sit still and were twisting in their seats. It seemed that they liked this program more than the adults. Legend has it that your ancestor had a rake with 8 nails. The fortune teller said that he was destined to fall in love. When he saw a beautiful girl, he would laugh and laugh. He would not blush or be afraid. You are very much like him. In the end, the new little pig, Nan Xiaoyu, who wore Zhu Beiji's monk robes and carried a rake weapon, ignited everyone's enthusiasm. Many parents who had read the story of Journey to the West to their children smiled knowingly. The children in the audience also shouted excitedly, "Zhu Beiji, this is Zhu Beiji." Chapter 649. After Shi and her friends finished performing Song of a Pig, the parents present applauded the group of children. Although they were not stingy with their applause for every performance, everyone's approval made the children's nervous expressions relax a little, and they burst into bright smiles one after another. Yang Yi went backstage to pick up his daughter. Shi was still excited. She was not afraid of the cold after taking off the prop costume, and she pestered her father to talk. If Yang Yi had not stopped her and asked her to put on the down jacket, the little girl might have caught a cold unknowingly. After putting on the clothes, Yang Yi touched Shi's back to see if there was sweat on it. She was indeed sweating a little. However, Yang Yi forgot to warm his hand, so it was cold. He reached in and the little girl was so cold that she screamed, "Ah, ah." "It's Dad's fault, Dad's fault." Yang Yi apologized to his daughter in embarrassment. He quickly rubbed Shi's back for a while, and then he picked up her small towel and wiped her sweat. Otherwise, she might catch a cold. The temperature in the room was neither high nor low, but the little girl was still sweating. It could be seen how serious she was. However, Cici didn't feel tired at all. She was still enthusiastic. Although she cried out for a while because of the cold, it couldn't stop her desire to talk at all. "Papa, let me tell you, I jumped wrong in one place." When she was talking to her father, she was still holding the plastic flower that the teacher gave her. "It doesn't matter if you made a mistake. Your performance today has been very good. Who will notice that you made a mistake?" Yang Yi realized that what he said was a little inappropriate. He could not teach his daughter to ignore her own problems, so he added, "You just need to remember where you made a mistake, and you can change it in the future." Yes. No. The little girl promised sweetly at first, but soon she found the loophole in her father's words. She giggled and said, "No, I have finished the performance. I won't dance any more." "Who said that? You haven't performed for Auntie before. Maybe when we go home during the spring festival, you will perform for Auntie again." Yang Yi laughed. "Then I'll look better, then I'll dance for Auntie." The little girl got excited again and said seriously to her father. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment before he realized that his daughter had unintentionally made a mistake in her wording. However, it seemed that there was nothing wrong with it. He looked at the energetic little girl and the corners of his mouth curved up. The performance of Song of a Pig was very successful. At the very least, many parents who did not have time to rehearse with their children and watch the performance for the first time were full of praise after watching it. After the gala ended, they even went to look for Yang Yi, hoping to get a copy of the audio. It would be even better if there was a video of the show. They also wanted to give their children a memory of growing up. Of course, he could have explained it more thoroughly. After all, Yang Yi was also a big star. If his child could sing Yang Yi's music together with his child, he could boast about it to his family and friends in the future. This was human nature, and there was nothing wrong with it. Yang Yi simply agreed to their request. He used the name of Phoebe Studio to upload the audio and video of the show to several music websites, and set it to be free to download and browse. In other words, Yang Yi directly made this song public for these children and their parents to use for free. Of course, this was except for commercial purposes. However, Yang Yi seemed to have underestimated his influence. It was a holiday on New Year's Day, so she did not need to go to kindergarten. Taking advantage of the good weather today, the sun was shining brightly, and the temperature during the day was much warmer. Yang Yi took Mo Fei and the children back to the small building of the coffee shop to take a stroll. It was also a change of environment and air. When she saw Yang Yi suddenly appear, Ding Xiang, who was walking back to the bar with a plastic tray, panicked. "Where's Huan Huan?" Yang Yi opened the door for Murphy, who was pushing a horizontal stroller, and looked around, pretending to ask casually. Ding Xiang, who was not good at lying, realized that something was wrong. In a panic, she almost accidentally dropped the plastic tray on the ground. In a fluster, she bent down to catch the tray, held it in her arms, and stammered, "Brother Yang, Huan, she's upstairs." In fact, when these words came out, Ding Xiang's face was full of annoyance. What kind of lie was this? How could she lie so poorly? If Yang Yi went upstairs to take a look, wouldn't she be exposed? Is she really upstairs? Yang Yi asked meaningfully. Ding Xiang did not know how to lie, but she was not stupid. When Yang Yi said this, she immediately understood. She looked at Yang Yi carefully and asked in a low voice, "Brother Yang, you know everything?" Yang Yi proudly raised his eyebrows, pointed his finger at Ding Xiang, and did not answer directly, but said, "You're not allowed to leak the information." How could Ding Xiang not understand Yang Yi's meaning? She smiled bitterly. It was very difficult to help keep a secret, but she had to be a double agent? This was too difficult for the honest sister Xiang. At this moment, she was listening to them talking in riddles. She was very confused and could not help but ask, "Papa, what are you talking about? Where is little auntie?" Murphy, who was next to her, smiled. She gently patted her daughter's shoulder and said, "Your little aunt went to shoot a movie." "Little aunt went to shoot a movie? Mom, I want to see it." She said happily. "Not this time, because the place where your little aunt is shooting is very messy and dangerous. Next time, if it's not dangerous, Dad will take you there." Yang Yi took over the conversation and coaxed Shi, who was very interested in these things, for a while, so that she dispelled the idea of going to the smoky battlefield to watch the shooting. Yang Yi did not embarrass Ding Xiang anymore. Instead, he took out an album and handed it to Ding Xiang, asking her to put it on the shelf. "Happiness." Ding Xiang read the words on the cover of the unopened album, and then said with some surprise, "Chen Yijie's Happiness album? Isn't this album released today?" Ding Xiang knew about this because Gua Ziyi had mentioned it to her when they were chatting. Of course, Ding Xiang quickly realized how stupid her question was. She still knew the relationship between Yang Yi and Chen Yijie. Yang Yi explained to her, "Well, there are 2 songs in this album. I wrote them for him, so he sent me a few sample discs. I took one of them and put it in the shop. You can also play it. Chen Yijie's songs are worth slowly appreciating." Yang Yi got this album half a month ago. He just waited for the album to be released before giving it to Ding Xiang. This was also a manifestation of respect for the copyright. Ding Xiang nodded and opened the album to play it. However, Yang Yi did not stay in the shop to listen to the songs. He had to accompany Murphy to do some restorative exercises today. Therefore, after Yang Yi put down their things in the coffee shop, he took Murphy, Shi, pushed the baby stroller, and carried Tong Tong out again. They went for a walk on the sunny and green path by the dam. Murphy could not do strenuous exercises now. Even running would take some time for her body to adapt to a certain intensity of exercise. At this stage, for Murphy, walking was the best, safest, and most effective postpartum recovery exercise. What's more, bathed in the warm winter afternoon sun, breathed in the fresh outdoor air, looked at her lively and lovely daughter in front of her, and looked at Yang Yi, who was helping to push the baby stroller beside her. Murphy felt that she was in a very good mood. She did not have the feeling of depression that she had when she took care of the newborn Shi by herself except for her parents. As they walked, Shi suddenly started humming a song. La la la, where is spring? Where is spring? Over there. Da 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 da. In my eyes. Perhaps it was because she saw the slightly yellowish greenery in the bushes in front of her and the green needles of the evergreen pine trees in front of her, the little girl suddenly remembered this song that she had not sung for a long time. Of course, she did not remember all the lyrics. She even mixed up the words. Listening to Shi's pleasant singing, Murphy's mood became even better. She could not help but hum along. When Shi heard it, she immediately turned around and ran happily to her mother's side. She held her mother's hand and sang with her. This way, she could remember the lyrics. It was a pity that Tong Tong did not know how to sing. However, when Shi sang, she did not forget about her little brother. From time to time, she would bend down and look into Tong Tong's eyes. Tong Tong, who was lying comfortably in the baby stroller and covered in a small blanket, was curiously looking at the bright world with his big black eyes. From time to time, his sister's head would pop out. When Tong Tong looked into his sister's eyes, he could not help but open his toothless mouth and reveal a little bit of his little tongue. He smiled happily. Shi also let out a bell-like laughter. She did not get tired of teasing her little brother over and over again. It was as if they were playing hide and seek. She was having a lot of fun. Chapter 650. In addition to taking a walk, Yang Yi would also accompany Murphy to do some simple joint exercises. For ordinary people, these exercises could only be regarded as a warm-up before exercise, but for Murphy at this stage, it could be regarded as a low-frequency exercise that she could do slowly. Yang Yi and Murphy stood like Titanic. He was behind Murphy, his hand holding Murphy's waist, and said softly, "Straighten your arms on both sides and lay them flat." Murphy looked at the sparkling river under the sun, listened to Yang Yi's instructions, and raised her arms. Well, now only the background music of "My Heart Will Go On" was left. Every night in my dream, I see you, I feel you. Of course, now was not the time to sing. Taking advantage of the sunshine and the wind, Yang Yi continued to guide Murphy. Okay, next, slowly raise your arms up until you reach the highest point and touch your hands together. Yang Yi said as he helped Murphy slightly raise her arms. After Murphy finished raising her hands high, he asked her to put them down, return to the position where her arms were flat, and raise them forward to clap. Okay, put them down. Let's take a breather, then continue, Yang Yi said with a smile. How many times do we have to do this? Murphy followed him a few times, and finally couldn't help but ask. A total of 10 sets. After you're done, you can move on to the next exercise, Yang Yi said. So many. Mo Fei let out a cry. Of course, Murphy was only being coaxed by Yang Yi, so she let herself be. In fact, she couldn't wait to get her figure back as soon as possible. She couldn't let Yang Yi see her fat. Naturally, after giving birth, she wasn't very fat. Those flirtatious women outside had such good figures, and she was about to lose. While Yang Yi and Murphy were exercising like standing on the bow of a boat, Shi, who was taking care of her little brother in the stroller, curiously looked at their parents for a while, but soon lost interest. She turned her head and continued to play with her little brother. Little brother, let's shake hands, okay? She reached her hand in and waved it in front of Tong Tong's eyes. Tong Tong's pair of confused eyes turned, and his mouth slightly opened as if he was asking, "Big sister, what are you doing?" The little girl excitedly made up a story. A long time ago. Little brother, you were disobedient and was taken away by a big wolf. Big sister wanted to save you. Then big sister saw you. Little brother, and big sister wanted to save you. The little girl muttered her story endlessly. Finally, Tong Tong used his little left hand to grab his sister's finger when his sister's hand came over again. He seemed to understand her story and smiled happily. Hee, little brother, you're holding big sister's hand. The little girl also smiled happily. After Murphy finished her hand exercises, she still had to do leg exercises. She had to slim down her arms, calves, and thighs. Come, support me. Yang Yi moved in front of Murphy and stood face to face with her. He let Murphy put her left hand on his shoulder for support. Slowly lift your right calf, but don't move your thigh. Then use your right hand to grab the bend of your ankle and gently pull it up. It had to be said that during the year of pregnancy and childbirth, Murphy had suffered a lot. In the past, when she was pregnant, she couldn't do any exercise because her legs had to support her big belly. Now that she wanted to do leg exercises, Murphy had just tiptoed when she felt the other supporting leg go limp and weak, and it started to tremble. I'm going to fall. Murphy hurriedly put her right leg down. It's okay, don't be nervous. I'll support you. You won't fall. Look. Yang Yi smiled. He pressed his hands on Murphy's waist and used his strong arms to lift Murphy up easily. That's right. Yang Yi's strength was abnormal. After giving birth, Murphy weighed almost 60 kilograms, but Yang Yi lifted Murphy up as if he was carrying Shi. Although Yang Yi only gently picked her up a little, less than 5 centimeters off the ground, and then put her down, Mo Fei was still startled by him and screamed in pain. After landing, Murphy naturally hit Yang Yi's chest angrily and said, "What are you doing? Are you showing off your strength?" Hee, I'm just showing you. I'll support you. You don't have to worry about falling. Yang Yi smiled at his wife shamelessly. Just when Yang Yi was helping Mo Fei lift her legs, Yang Huan finally came back. She had changed out of her big cotton-padded jacket and back into her normal clothes, but her 2 braids were still tied up. But it didn't matter. Yang Huan looked more pure and beautiful with her braids. However, the male students she met on the way didn't expect that this pretty girl was actually very strong. Sister Ding Xiang. Yang Huan called out impatiently when she returned to the coffee shop. Then, she saw Guazi and said, "Hey, Xiao Gua, you're here?" Guazi, who had already learned about the situation from Ding Xiang, looked at Yang Huan and smiled strangely. Yang Huan didn't notice Guazi's mysterious smile. She said excitedly, "Xiao Gua, what are you doing here again? Are you here to eat the cake made by Sister Ding Xiang?" She was a little naughty. After saying that, she giggled. "Why do you have to mention that?" Guazi said gloomily. He could only look at the cake that he couldn't eat. Yang Huan smiled proudly and said, "Who told you to lose weight?" In my brother's words, it's like a group of good friends suddenly wanting to lose weight. The boat of friendship capsizes. The phrase, "the boat of friendship capsizes," was used by Yang Yi to promote the game Friendship Farm last year. What Yang Huan said was made up by the netizens, but Yang Huan was a little confused. The 3 of them chatted. Ding Xiang didn't dare to say anything, fearing that she would leak the secret. Guazi knew that Ding Xiang was not good at lying, so he helped her by asking Yang Huan how the shooting went. Finally, Yang Yi came back from a walk with Murphy, Shi, and Tong Tong. "Hey!" Yang Huan panicked when she saw her brother. "Don't say anything. Why is my brother here?" Huan, when is the school holiday?" Yang Yi asked, pretending not to care. Yang Huan looked at Ding Xiang with a reproachful look, as if she was saying, "Why didn't you tell me that my brother was here?" Then, she replied in confusion, "It's the holidays next week." Yang Yi nodded and said, "Then go home first after the holiday. It's hard for Qing to be alone at home." Go home and help him. What? Young Huan was dumbfounded. She still had to work. She said quickly, Brother, my brother has my sister-in-law to help him. You don't need me. Let me go home with you. Why don't you go home earlier? Why are you staying here? Yang Yi asked deliberately. Mo Fei, who was next to them, was amused to watch the siblings play the game of Mission Impossible, but she did not say anything. I. Yang Huan rolled her eyes and tried to find an excuse. Go to the military division? Yang Yi raised his eyebrows. Yang Huan was startled. He first glanced at Ding Xiang, who had her head lowered. Then, he looked at Yang Yi eagerly and asked, Big brother, you know everything? Yang Yi didn't keep her in suspense. He pointed at Yang Huan's braids with a smile and said, What do you think? Yang Huan stuck out her tongue and lowered her head shyly, not daring to say anything. Huan, why don't you tell everyone about your good news? Murphy asked with a smile. You're going to play Xiuqin. It's a great role. It's just a small supporting role. Yang Huan smiled shyly. And I'm afraid that you won't let me try. I'm afraid that people will say that you're partial to me. However, let me tell you, I really used my own strength to move teacher Chen Fengchen. At first, he didn't recognize me. Mr. Shenwani said that I acted well. Yang Huan said hurriedly. Yang Yi didn't say much to her. He had something to tell Yang Huan today. If you're really afraid that people will say that I'm partial to you, I won't give you this chance. Yang Yi took out the proposal of the ultimate challenge, which had been modified by the production professionals of China Star over the past few days. He handed it to Yang Huan and said, I'm the one who created this show. There are 6 permanent hosts, and you and Xiao Gua are 2 of them. It was the first time that Yang Huan knew about this show. Yang Yi had asked Mo Xiaowan to keep it a secret from Yang Huan to tease his sister. Gua Zi, who was sitting next to them, had already contacted the big program group of China Star. This show will be popular. You should take advantage of it and prepare well. Although you're not famous now, if you do this show well, you'll be as famous as Murphy and me in the future. In this way, you'll definitely be invited to act in a show. Ding Xiang won't have to work so hard to submit her resume to you, Yang Yi said with a smile. Ding Xiang lowered her head shyly. Brother Yang, I have a question. Gua Zi had thought of a key point before, and now he seized the opportunity to ask, why don't you and Murphy go on the show? I can understand Sister Murphy. She just gave birth, and it's not convenient for her. Haha, don't say. Murphy and I are used to being free, and we don't want to be bound by this fixed show. Besides, do you think Murphy and I are the kind of people who can play this show? Yang Yi was amused and said, if we join, we won't be able to make the audience laugh. But you're different. You have a good talent for comedy. However, you have to work hard to lose weight. Guazi held his head gloomily and said, I have to lose weight again. Don't worry. Once you're on this show, you'll want to win and lose weight. Yang Yi said happily. Prepare well. Our show is very important. The sooner it airs, the sooner we can promote our movie. Yang Yi finally revealed a secret. Chapter 651. Yang Yi was a hands-off boss, but his subordinates did not just eat and not work. For the sake of this exciting show and to perform well in front of their new boss, the people from China Star Productions worked hard like machines that had been filled with oil after receiving Yang Yi's proposal. They were highly efficient. Not only did Yang Yi receive the rearranged proposal, but the scriptwriters who were motivated to fight had also put in their best effort and began to design a few episodes' plots according to the patterns that Yang Yi had drawn for them. Yun Yongfeng was unwilling to drag the team down, so he brought a few people and stormed to the capital. The capital television station was the place that Yun Yongfeng was most familiar with. Back then, High Ability Challenge and Life of Transfiguration, as well as a variety show produced by China Star that was later eliminated, were all collaborations with the capital television station. Yun Yongfeng quickly found the director of the variety department, Meng Fanqing, whom he had a good relationship with, and passed the proposal of the limit challenge to him. Losing the 2 variety shows, High Energy Challenge and Life of Transfiguration, was a huge loss to the capital television station half a year ago. Of course, Meng Fanqing did not vent his anger on the innocent Yun Yongfeng. Old Yun, Zhongxing isn't being honest. As he complained about Yun Yongfeng's new boss, who had sold the 2 programs and allowed Xiongnan TV station to take advantage of the situation, he flipped through the proposal in his hands. As he read, the nagging in Meng Fanqing's mouth disappeared. What was left was only surprise. He was even engrossed in reading, his eyes never leaving the proposal. Heh, CEO Meng, I, Old Yun, have never cheated you, have I? Look, the High Energy Challenge is gone, but I've sent you the Limit Challenge. Looking at Meng Fanqing's expression, Yun Yongfeng knew that he had a chance, so he smiled and acted as if he was asking for credit. At this moment, Meng Fanqing's secretary knocked on the door and came in, pouring tea for Yun Yongfeng and Meng Fanqing. Since they had signed the confidentiality agreement, Meng Fanqing did not discuss the details of the show with Yun Yongfeng in front of his secretary. Instead, he talked about something else with Yun Yongfeng. Old Yun, I heard someone gossiping about your company last year. They said that it might have been Murphy or Yang Yi who bought it. Is it true? This was not a big secret, and he was telling it to Meng Fanqing. Yang Yi said honestly, it's true. Let me tell you, old Meng, the proposal in your hand, the idea for the limit challenge, was personally thought of by our boss, Yang Yi. Isn't it amazing? Yang Yi can write songs, write books, and even do variety shows. His brain is not simple. Meng Fanqing clicked his tongue and said, however, starting from scratch and earning enough money to buy your company in just a few years, this person is not simple at all. It was inappropriate for Yun Yang to talk about his boss in front of others, so he only smiled. After the secretary left, Meng Fanqing started talking to Yun Yongfeng. He had asked about the many details of the limit challenge, including the lineup of the hosts. Meng Fanqing was leaning towards having Yang Yi and Murphy on the show. If both of them could stay on the show, Meng Fanqing was not worried about the show's ratings at all. Obviously, this was just a thought. He was not the only one who thought about it. Guazi thought about it. Had Yun Yongfeng, Yen Tao, Ran Lian, and the rest not thought about it? After listening to Yun Yongfeng's explanation, Meng Fanqing shook his head regretfully. All right, let's talk. Your show is indeed more exciting than the High Ability Challenge. I won't deny that I also want Capital TV Station to participate in the production and broadcasting of this show. What are your conditions? Meng Fanqing closed the proposal book and said to Yun Yongfeng directly, let me tell you, old Yun, don't ask for too much. If we talk about it this time, we will add a few conditions in the contract. Capital TV Station will have the broadcasting rights for 5 years and the priority to renew the contract in the future. Meng Fanqing and Capital TV Station had stumbled on this issue in the High Ability Challenge. Meng Fanqing was very alert this time. When it came to the crucial moment, Yun Yongfeng looked at Meng Fanqing calmly and said, Old Meng, we will talk about other conditions later. Besides, our new boss is not harsh. He is willing to advance and retreat together with his partners and earn money together. However, there is a condition. You have to promise me first before we can talk about it. What condition? Meng Fanqing frowned and asked. We have to start the production of the show as soon as possible. We want the first episode to be broadcasted in the first week of March. Of course, the best time slot would be the prime time slot of the variety show from Friday to Sunday night. Yun Yongfeng's words were flawless. However, these were already 2 or 3 conditions. Meng Fanqing could not be bothered to think about the conditions contained in this paragraph. After he heard it, he could not help but jump up from his chair. Old Yun, are you crazy? You are also someone who knows the industry. How can an insider speak like a layman? How can I fulfill this condition of yours? Broadcast in March. It's already January now. When did I give you the time to change the program? Impossible, impossible. These programs of the TV station are all different. Once they are planned, it will be a season. I have arranged for you to be broadcasted in March. How can I change the program that is being broadcasted at this time? Meng Fanqing said in exasperation. "Co Meng, think of a way. It can be done." Yun Yongfeng smiled bitterly in his heart. Actually, he also felt that Yang Yi's idea was not easy to achieve, but he had to fight for the benefit of Yang Yi. Starting from nothing was a skill. Therefore, he tried his best to persuade Meng Fanqing. Move the original program to the back, move the later ones to the back as well. Can't you just cut off the remaining late-night programs that no one watches? Meng Fanqing was so angry that he laughed. Do you think this is a game of cards? Throw away the cards you don't want? There are many aspects involved in this. Yun Yongfeng continued, but this program of ours is very exciting. You said it yourself just now. Think about it, The Limit Challenge, is 100 times better than the original High Ability Challenge. If you introduce it to the capital TV station and everyone likes the Limit Challenge, and not High Ability Challenge, after it is broadcasted, aren't you humiliating Xiongnan TV station? Who asked them to steal your program? Honestly, Meng Fanqing was a little tempted. However, the Limit Challenge was a new thing after all. Meng Fanqing could not predict the future. He felt that it was good, but he could not guarantee that it would be as well written as it was filmed. Therefore, Meng Fanqing was still rationally unwilling to take the risk. Old Yun, I can promise you that it will be broadcasted in May. I will give you prime time. Meng Fanqing insisted. Then we really can't talk about it anymore. Director Meng, I'm sorry. Our boss has given instructions that it must be broadcasted in March. Yun Yongfeng hesitated for a while and could only give up. Of course, his tone was still very polite. Meng Fanqing reluctantly passed the proposal back to Yun Yongfeng. He shook his head and said, I still have the same promise. If your boss changes his mind, we will continue to talk in the future. Meng Fanqing nagged a little more, unwilling to give up. Honestly, old Yun, if you don't believe me, you can try a few more TV stations. No one will give you such extreme time. Director Meng, no matter what, I still have to thank you for taking the time to meet me despite your busy schedule. Yun Yongfeng said courteously. Business is not in the picture, but benevolence is still there. I hope that we will have a chance to work together in the future. It's still the same. If you change your mind, come and talk to me any time. I like your program very much. If we can work together, I will definitely find a good broadcast time for you. Meng Fanqing shook hands with Yun Yongfeng with a smile. He did not know that not losing his temper this time had left a good impression on their future collaboration. Yun Yongfeng left the capital television station and shook his head with a sigh. Boss, what should we do? His subordinate asked. What else can we do? Let's continue to look for TV stations. Since we're in the capital, let's go to Central TV to take a look. There might be a chance. Yun Yongfeng perked up. Chapter 652. There was no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. The news of China Star Productions' actions had still spread to some people who were interested. Among them was Shining Star Productions, who had been curious about why Mo Xiaowan had bought the shell from China Star Productions. Hu Shang, who had gotten what he wanted and had started directing and recording High Ability Challenge, was a little wary. He asked some of his old connections for information, but it seemed like his betrayal of China Star Productions was a little disgraceful. China Star Productions was now united and wanted to do a good job in the new program. His old connections were all hesitant and could not say anything useful. However, the higher-ups of Xingyao Productions had an idea. They started from Meng Fanqing's secretary. Although the information they got was limited, the name of the new show, The Limit Challenge, as well as the boss and producer behind it, Yang Yi, were all keywords that surfaced. The Limit Challenge? It must be the same program as ours. Different soup but not the same medicine. Hu Shang sneered and attacked his old boss without any regard for his feelings. He said, What can that Yang Yi do? I didn't even see him come up with any plan in December. If there was really a new program, he would have brought it out long ago. So, it's definitely not a new program. He probably couldn't think of any good ideas, so he let the original group of people modify it and change the name to continue with High Ability Challenge. Are you sure? Shining Star Productions operations manager, Luo Jinting, said to Hu Shang, I don't think it's that simple. The copyright of High Ability Challenge is in our hands. Unless they modify the original model beyond recognition, it's impossible to bypass the copyright restrictions. If they want to do the limit challenge and it's exactly the same as High Ability Challenge, aren't they waiting for us to sue them to death? I know Yun Yongfeng well. He's not simple and won't be stupid enough to do anything illegal. Luo Jinting and Hu Shang were not on good terms. Luo Jinting wanted to get one of his own people to be the director and control the project of High Ability Challenge, making it a copy of his achievement. However, Hu Shang was considered a parachute and was poached by the higher-ups. How could Luo Jinting be happy when the cake was divided? However, Luo Jinting was right. Hu Shang frowned and said, maybe they really did as you said and changed the High Energy Challenge beyond recognition? Even if it's a little similar, we might lose our audience. Then what do you want? You want me to send people to the major TV stations to stop Yun Yongfeng and his people from talking? Luo Jinting sneered and said, what I mean is, anyway, China Star's production won't be able to set off any waves. How many viewers can a program that's been modified to the point that even their mother can't recognize it take away from us? Let's just wait and see what kind of program they have. Hu Shang glared at Luo Jinting. The atmosphere between the two was tense, as if they were about to quarrel. However, the people who had a meeting to discuss this matter were not only the people from Xingyao but also the hosting team of High Energy Challenge. Of course, Li Manman was the biggest star. Coincidentally, Li Manman and Hu Shang were the same. When they heard this news, they both had the urge to fight back. Hu Shang left because he didn't want to see how well his old boss was doing. He was worried that his departure would become a joke. Previously, his old colleagues had avoided him, which made him feel uneasy. Li Manman was the same, especially when she heard Yang Yi's name. Why is it him again? Li Manman gritted her teeth in her heart. She felt that her fate had always been entangled with Yang Yi, but it wasn't a good thing. Whether it was when she encountered Murphy who appeared out of nowhere when she had the most hope to achieve a platinum album, or when she was overshadowed by Yang Yi, who was also Murphy at that time, or when Li Manman tried to follow Yang Yi's trend by singing military songs and pretending to be a couple, she failed every time. Now, when she finally put in so much passion and connections to do this program, Yang Yi appeared again. Why is this person so annoying? Why is he always making things difficult for me? Manager Luo, Director Hu, don't be anxious. Li Manman covered her mouth and laughed, saying, I think this matter is quite easy to handle. We don't have to fall out with China Star Production now. As long as we let some irrelevant people help us pass on some of our own guesses to the reporters, we can find trouble with China Star Production. Moreover, we can also hype up our program. When it is broadcast in the middle of the month, the ratings will definitely be higher. Luo Jinting looked at Li Manman's smiling face and unparalleled beauty. His head was a little congested. Although he was still rational, the contradiction with Hu Shang was thrown to the back of his mind. Let me think about it carefully. This is also feasible. Completely unaware that someone had begun to plot against him behind his back, Yang Yi was still comfortably acting as his boss. However, Yang Yi didn't arrange any activities today. When he came back from a walk in the evening, he turned on the TV and waited. However, Yang Yi wasn't interested in the news program that was being broadcasted on CCTV. He was playing with Tong Tong, who was adapting to his embrace. At the beginning, when he left his mother's embrace for a while, the little guy seemed to be unhappy in his father's arms. He opened his mouth and seemed to want to cry. Yang Yi decisively took out the magic tool that Lu Weisha's mother, Maria, taught them to use. It was the pacifier. The pacifier was stuffed into Tong Tong's mouth. The little guy habitually used his toothless gums to bite it and sucked. The mood of crying that had just sprouted seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Isn't it fun? Isn't it fun? Yang Yi sat on the sofa, holding Tong Tong. He laughed and shook his head. Sometimes he pulled away, sometimes he got close, and sometimes he talked to him and teased him. Hey! Little brother really stopped crying. He didn't cry even when he didn't sleep. She, who was lying on the sofa, said in surprise. The little girl looked as if she had discovered a new continent. She looked at her grandparents as if she wanted to tell them about this new discovery. Right. Yang Yi reached out and teased Tong Tong's chubby little face. He couldn't stop smiling. When Tong Tong didn't cry or make a fuss, he was as cute as a panda cub. Anyone would want to hold him and play with him for a while. Yang Chongguei looked at them with envy. His grandfather didn't care about being reserved. He came over and said with a wrinkled smile, "Let me hug you. Let me hug you too." Yang Yi hadn't even warmed up yet. How could he be willing to? Dad, wait a minute. I'm still communicating with Tong Tong. If you interrupt, all my previous efforts will be in vain. Yang Yi said a little seriously, but it was just to scare his father. Don't get involved. What if our grandson cries? Dong Yue couldn't stand it anymore. She pulled her husband and complained. In fact, she also wanted to hug Tong Tong. She had been watching for a long time. Yang Yi even performed a magic trick with his son. Look, there's a small ball in Dad's hand. Yang Yi grabbed a fluffy yellowish-green ball and showed it to Lil Bai En. The bright colors immediately attracted Lil Bai An's eyes. Tong Tong sucked on the pacifier while looking at the fluffy ball. His clear black eyes didn't show any curiosity. Yang Yi thought that his son was interested. He said, "Watch carefully. The ball is going to disappear soon." In fact, the most excited and nervous one was Shi. The little girl's eyes were wide open, and her little face showed a nervous expression. It was as if she was worried that she would miss a wonderful moment. In the blink of an eye, Yang Yi's hand suddenly shook, and the ball disappeared from his palm. Isn't it magical? Yang Yi didn't see Tong Tong's reaction at all. He winked at the little guy proudly and said with a smile, "It disappeared in a flash, and then, you see, it appeared again in a flash." Yang Yi shook his hand, and the ball appeared in his palm again. Tong Tong looked at the brightly colored ball and focused on it again. Of course, Tong Tong didn't care about the so-called magic trick. He didn't know what his dad was doing. He might be curious about something new, but he definitely didn't want to find out the secret. On the other hand, she was watching with great interest. She watched the whole process from above, and saw the secret behind the magic trick. The little girl laughed and exposed him. "Papa, I saw it. You hid the small ball behind you. Behind your hand, I saw it." "You really saw it?" Yang Yi didn't get angry. He raised his eyebrows at his daughter and asked mysteriously. "Yes, I saw you put the ball behind your hand." She excitedly grabbed the ball and put it on the back of her father's hand. She held it between her fingers and described her discovery. "What about now?" Yang Yi's hand shook again, and the small ball magically disappeared from his hand again. Then, Yang Yi looked at Shi with an unfathomable smile and asked. Chapter 653. Shi seemed to like watching her father perform magic. The sudden disappearance of the ball made the little girl cry out, "Aya!" However, the cry seemed to contain more surprise than surprise. "Ha ha! I know, Papa put the ball behind his hand again." Shi sat on the sofa with her hands propped up, laughing like a cute little frog. "Who said that? He didn't put it behind his hand. It's really gone." Yang Yi seemed to want to prove his innocence, and he even stretched out his left hand for Shi to verify. Shi saw that the back of her father's left hand was empty, and her confident smile disappeared, leaving only confusion in her eyes. The little girl grabbed her father's left hand and looked at it over and over again. She even touched the texture of her father's hand, as if she wanted to confirm whether it was her father's hand or not. I know. The little girl's eyes suddenly lit up. She pointed to her father's other hand, which was beside Tong Tong's swaddling clothes, and said, "Papa, you have it in that hand." It seemed that the little girl was very smart. However, her father was destined to perform magic to the end today, so how could she find out his flaw so easily? Therefore, Yang Yi turned around with Tong Tong in his arms with a smile, and then he gave his right hand to Shi Shi and said, "Look, is Papa holding it in this hand?" Shi Shi was surprised to find that her father's right hand was also empty. "Papa, why is it gone?" The little girl finally couldn't help but ask in confusion. "Guess." Shi Shi pouted her small mouth and said to her father, "I don't know." "Papa, tell me." "Hey, wait, Shi Shi, there seems to be something in your ear." Yang Yi's surprise made Shi Shi stunned. At this time, Yang Yi stretched out his left hand again and pretended to touch Shi Shi's ear. Then he opened his hand in front of the little girl and said with a smile, "Look." The yellowish-green ball suddenly appeared in his father's hand. Shi Shi was both surprised and happy. She grabbed the ball with one hand, as if she was afraid that it would disappear again. She also grabbed her father's big hand with her other hand. However, she frowned and thought for a long time, but she still couldn't think of a reason. Why would little ball appear next to his ear? Amazing, right? This is called magic. Yang Yi smiled and asked. The little girl was not stingy with her praise. She looked at her father with admiration and said, "That's amazing. Papa, how did you bring the ball here?" Actually, when Yang Chongguei was watching Yang Yi deceive the naive Shi Shi with a trick, the corners of his mouth twitched in disdain. The old man felt that if he wanted to coax his granddaughter, he would have to put in some real effort. For example, the stone-throwing lock and the stone-catching lock, which he had played with Cici during the New Year last year. However, to the old man's surprise, the trick worked. Shi Shi's happy and worshipful expression made Yang Chongguei envious. What's so strange about this? Little Yang Shi, come here. Yang Chongguei waved his hand and said casually, "Grandpa will also show you." Shi Shi's attention was attracted. She happily ran to her grandfather with the ball. Yang Chongguei also played Yang Yi's trick, but he played a little more tricks. For example, he asked Shi Shi to guess which hand he hid the ball in. However, Yang Yi was next to him. He smiled and pointed at Shi Shi. "Left hand, left hand, left hand." Shi Shi trusted her father very much. She happily jumped up, grabbed her grandfather's hand, and opened it. Sure enough, little ball was there. "Yeah, I guessed right." The little girl was very happy. "Tai Zi, you unfilial son, don't tell anyone." Yang Chongguei scolded. Yang Yi couldn't help but laugh. Tong Tong seemed to be affected by the adult atmosphere. He looked at his father. Although he still had a pacifier in his mouth, his eyes were curved and he smiled. In order not to be beaten, Yang Yi rationally didn't disturb the old man's magic trick for his granddaughter. Instead, he turned around with a smile and prepared to continue to communicate with his youngest son. Just then, Yang Yi saw Tong Tong's smiling eyes. "Wow, you smiled. Wow, you actually looked at Daddy and smiled." Yang Yi was overjoyed. He smiled and said to Tong Tong, "Come on, Hua Hua, smile for Daddy again." The little boy's smile grew wider and wider. He seemed to be having a lot of fun. Murphy took the opportunity to go upstairs to take a shower. She was afraid that Tong Tong would feel dependent on her and refuse to play with his father. When Murphy came downstairs, Yang Yi was having a lot of fun with his son. Yang Chongguei also told Shi Shi how Yang Yi, the bad father, had tricked Shi Shi. The little girl wasn't angry with her father. She was holding a small ball and studying it with great interest. Of course, those magic tricks had to be done quickly. Although Shi Shi knew how to do it now, she couldn't do it. She could only amuse herself. "How is it? Is Hua Hua getting along well with you?" Murphy sat down on Yang Yi's arm and asked with a smile. "Yeah, it's pretty good. Look, he didn't ask you to carry him when you came over." Yang Yi teased Tong Tong and said to Murphy with a smile. He even smiled when I was teasing him. This pacifier is pretty good. Murphy laughed. If I knew it was so good, I would have asked you to buy it earlier. Why didn't I think of it? She used a pacifier before, but I don't remember it being as sticky as Huahua's after she was born. The two of them even experimented with the pacifier enthusiastically. For example, they let Murphy hold the pacifier for a while before passing it to Yang Yi. Looking at Tong Tong's reaction, the little boy didn't seem to want to cry. Of course, Yang Yi turned on the TV today to watch the premiere of Soldier's Assault. Today, Soldier's Assault would take over the primetime slot of the previous TV series and officially meet the national audience. Although Yang Yi told others that he didn't care about it, as it was his first work to be shown on the big screen, he was actually a little nervous. The main reason was that he didn't know how Chen Fengchen's work would turn out. Therefore, he turned on the TV early in the morning and waited for the finale of the previous TV series to finish airing before watching the first episode of Soldier's Assault. Just as Yang Yi and Murphy were having fun teasing Tong Tong, the powerful opening theme song came from the TV and finally attracted Yang Yi and Murphy's attention. They didn't know when, but the previous TV series had finished airing, and the opening theme of Soldier's Assault came into their view. Conquer Heaven. Murphy really liked the music composed by Yang Yi. She felt that the pure music was majestic and heart-wrenching, which made her admire Yang Yi's talent even more. Although Murphy didn't really resonate with men's passion, it didn't affect her appreciation of the music. Dad, Mom, look. This is a TV series based on the story written by Yang Yi. The background music is also written by Yang Yi. Do you like it? Murphy proudly stuck her head out from Yang Yi's side and introduced it to Yang Yi and Dong Yue. It was as if she was proud of Yang Yi's brilliance. Yang Chongguei looked at the hot-blooded military training scenes that flashed across the screen. He didn't say anything and just watched. Perhaps some of the scenes reminded him of the past. However, Dong Yue wasn't in the mood for leisure. She saw the opportunity and sat between Shi and Yang Yi with a smile. She reached out her hand and said, "Let me carry Huawei. You guys must be tired. Watch the TV, I'll take care of the kids." Chapter 654. Just like Yang Yi and his wife, there were many people who were waiting to watch Soldier's Assault. Many fans of Yang Yi's books, many loyal viewers of the CCTV TV series, and even some viewers who were attracted by the discussions of their relatives and friends were sitting in front of the TV. Of course, there were exceptions, such as Chu Qin. He was an ordinary bus driver. After a busy day, when he returned home, the only thought in his mind was to make a cup of hot tea, soak his feet, and then watch a football game comfortably. His 8-year-old son was trained by him, and he also had a strong interest in football. When Chu Qin was watching TV, his son also ran over excitedly and squeezed next to his father to watch the game together. "Have you finished your homework?" Chu Qin asked. "I'm done," the kid replied without hesitation, not taking his eyes off the book. However, today's AFC Champions League game started early. When Chu Qin turned on the TV, it was already halfway through the second half. After a while, the game ended. "That's it. Go and read." Chu Qin patted his son's head and smiled. "Look again." The little boy didn't give up. He didn't know if it was because he didn't have enough fun or he wanted to avoid studying. Chu Qin drank tea leisurely and looked at his son pressing the remote control. He knew that there were no other games. All the leagues today had to make way for the game of the AFC Champions League, and the games in Europe and China that were broadcasted live would only start 2 hours later. However, the little boy pressed the remote control and unknowingly came to the central station. A piece of music that seemed to be chanting attracted his attention, and his finger that was pressing the next station couldn't help but stop. "What is this?" Chu Qin couldn't help but take a few glances, and he couldn't move his eyes away. The music of Conquering Heaven, together with the opening of Soldier's Assault, had a different kind of magic. It made people feel the kind of uncontrollable excitement in the dull atmosphere, and it made people experience the tragedy of life and death in the surging emotions. Note 1. Especially in the opening scene of a group of soldiers in the rain, holding steel spears and shouting as they charged forward. The music also had a low humming sound, as if it made people want to stand up and salute them. As the background music became louder and louder, strange human voices began to sing. Coupled with the strong and powerful drumming, the sound of horns became louder and louder. The soldiers crawled forward in the mud pits, ran in the dense jungle, and ran with logs. Their desperate expressions were awe-inspiring. What kind of film is this? Chu Chin was the same as many passers-by in the country who accidentally pressed on this channel and became curious. The little boy was afraid that his father would scold him. After watching for a while, he came to his senses and hurriedly continued to look for the football game. Don't press it back to the stage just now. Chu Chin was watching it with great interest, but in the end, it disappeared in a flash. He hurriedly asked his son to switch it back. There's no more football match. Let's watch this. The little guy sneaked a peek at his father's expression. Seeing that he didn't have any intention of asking him to read, he leaned back in relief. Just like his father, he crossed his legs and watched TV. Soldiers Assault? What kind of film is this? After the opening scene, Chu Chin finally realized what kind of TV series he was watching. It was actually the first episode. When his son heard this, his eyes lit up and he said, "Dad, I know. This is a book written by Yang Yi. My deskmate told me that I like the storybooks written by Yang Yi." You're reading storybooks in school? Chu Chin looked over with a dangerous look in his eyes. Only then did the little boy realize that he had accidentally let it slip. He was dumbfounded and didn't know how to respond. The father and son were bickering while watching the TV series. They were also watching it with great interest. However, it was different from them. Many viewers watched Soldiers Assault because they wanted to see if Chen Fengchen's story was the same as the original work they had read. Was it as exciting as the original work? For example, Mu Yucheng, who was far away in Yongcheng. As a hardcore fan of the Pigeon King, Yang Yi, how could Mu Yucheng miss the fact that Yang Yi's work was being shown on TV? After Yang Yi gave birth to his son, he didn't release any new books for half a year. He could only watch his old works to relieve his boredom. Mu Yucheng sighed as he watched TV. The plot of Soldiers Assault was similar to the original work in Mu Yucheng's memory. What Mu Yucheng cared more about was the acting skills of the actors. For example, the actor who played Su Sanduo, Geng Sha. It's said that Su Sanduo is played by a new actor. This Geng Sha was just an extra in the past. It can be considered a comeback. Mu Yucheng looked at the opening scene and muttered to himself, "I wonder how his acting is." Alright, who made this opening scene? It's so awesome. It makes my blood boil in the middle of the night. However, when the TV series started and the camera panned to Geng Sha, Mu Yucheng saw Geng Sha's short stature and honest face. He faintly felt that this kid wasn't bad. The plot progressed quickly. In just 6 minutes, Mu Yucheng saw the camouflaged Su Sanduo setting up a wooden plank on a broken viaduct. F***ck, idiot, don't take the risk. This is a drill. You'll fall. Mu Yucheng couldn't help but shout. Even though he knew that Su Sanduo didn't die in the end, Mu Yucheng couldn't help but worry for Geng Sha. Unknowingly, Mu Yucheng had already immersed himself in the story. It was as if Su Sanduo was Geng Sha, and Geng Sha wasn't acting as Su Sanduo. He was Su Sanduo. It was hard to say whether it was Geng Sha's acting or Chen Fengchen's acting that was good. Every scene and every editing was just right for the emotional effect. F***ck. When Mu Yucheng saw Geng Sha's bleeding face drooping to the side, he couldn't help but tear up. He wiped his tears and scolded, "Do you think I don't know that you can't die? You're just like a cockroach." He scolded because he was touched. The scene returned to when Su Sanduo was young. The story progressed very quickly. In just a few scenes, it transitioned from Su Sanduo's childhood when he was bullied to Su Sanduo after he grew up. Of course, the story of the two older brothers applying for the job was presented to the audience in a humorous way. These scenes were still very funny. It was just that amidst the humor, the poor, helpless, and boorish father, and the three useless sons, it made people feel an inexplicable sense of sadness. It's really well filmed. If I had to think about it myself, I wouldn't have thought that it would be so tough. Mu Yuqing watched silently, his heart filled with emotions. Originally, he just wanted to see how Su Sandwa's acting was, so he turned off the TV and went to play games. However, after watching it, Mu Yuqing couldn't stop. Back at the house of Chu Qin, the bus driver, Chu Qin looked at the scene of squad leader Shi visiting the village. He looked at the simple and cunning farmers, looked at the gray and yellow environment, and looked at the old-fashioned clothes of the people. He couldn't help but fall into deep thought. He was also a farmer's child. These scenes reminded him of his past. Chu Qin was just a small person at the bottom of the city. However, compared to the hardships he had when he was young, at least his environment was clean, and he had good clothes to wear and good food to eat. If his naughty son was born in the countryside like Su Sanduo and didn't know anything, would he let him join the army, let alone play football? Dad. The naughty son in his mind was calling him. What? Chu Qin came back to his senses. Why does Su Sandwa's father want to kick Su Sanduo? Dad, you don't even use your feet when you hit me. The little boy asked. Chu Qin was amused and asked, Do you want me to kick you? No, I'm not a ball. The little boy cried. People watched TV dramas for the plot, but this guy watched TV dramas for fun. Chu Qin smiled and continued watching. He was already attracted by the plot. At the beginning, it was Su Sanduo who tragically covered his teammates in danger during the war. Now, it was the story of Su Sanduo before he became a soldier. Chu Qin really wanted to know how this short, stupid kid with no merits became a soldier. However, at this moment, his son asked again, Dad. What? What does son of a turtle mean? Chapter 655. There were many types of excitement in movies and TV dramas. The ups and downs of the plot, the grand and exciting scenes, the clashes between tough guys, or the humorous dialogue between the characters could all make for an exciting scene that made people want to linger on. However, the thing that could make people reminisce and yearn for the most was the true feelings that moved people. Soldier's Assault was a show for men, so it should be a hot-blooded TV series. However, after the first episode, the audience who had never watched the original novel and already had an initial impression of the show from the name of the show came back to their senses. That wasn't right. This show didn't seem to have the hearty battle scenes that they had imagined. Instead, it presented more of the psychological activities of the characters. What moved them and made them forget the time was the entanglement of fate and the revelation of true feelings between Su Sanduo, his father, the village chief, Chang Kai, squad leader Shi, and so on. Of course, most of the audience didn't think that much. They even forgot about the opening scene of Su Sanduo participating in the military exercise. After the first episode, all they could think about was whether Su Sanduo could become a soldier or not. However, after the first episode, the show was over. Since the previous show took up an episode, the premiere of Soldier's Assault was only one episode. The next day, they would have to watch 2 episodes in a row. However, the ending of the plot was driving them crazy. If squad leader Shi persuaded Su Sandwa's father to agree to Su Sanduo not becoming a soldier, would Su Sanduo still have a chance? With this thought in mind, the audience turned off the TV gloomily. Mother**Kerr, after watching Soldier's Assault, they couldn't watch any other shows. All they could think about was Su Sandwa's fate. The next day, when the audience returned to their respective workstations, a colleague who had watched Soldier's Assault casually talked about the show, which immediately led to a heated discussion. Someone even picked up the morning newspaper and pointed at the reporter who broke the news. He couldn't wait to tell his colleagues, "You guys don't know this, but the super nice opening song you were talking about just now was written by Yang Yi, the author of the original novel. He's also the composer of the songs Listen to the Sea and Coming Across the Ocean to See You. He's also Murphy's husband. He's that good?" That song made my blood boil. I'm already 36 years old, but I feel like I'm only 20. I still want to become a soldier and experience the feeling of fighting alongside my comrades. Someone bragged. Forget it. It's a peaceful time now. What war is there for you to fight? As they chatted excitedly, more and more people learned about the drama and were curious to keep up with the trend. Yang Yi's impression of Soldier's Assault was quite good. The plot wasn't too different from what he had imagined. Geng Xia's acting also seemed to give this character the soul it deserved. Chen Fengchen's ability as a director did not disappoint Yang Yi. The old man was as impressive as ever. The use of close-up and close-up shots, the expression of the character's emotions, and the tight, gripping rhythm were all things that Yang Yi admired. Let's not talk about Yang Yi himself. He didn't know how to act yet. But compared to Du Yuanlei's Fairy Tale and The Fugitive, Yang Yi felt that Du Yuanlei, who he used to think was very good at acting, was still a distance away from Chen Fengchen. The older, the wiser. Yang Yi wondered if he should tell Du Yuanlei the next time he met her and ask her to learn from Chen Fengchen. The next day, Yang Yi sent Shi Shi to kindergarten. He started to feel the influence of Soldier's Assault. A few parents saw him and praised him. They told Yang Yi that his novel was a good drama. One of the parents even asked Yang Yi innocently, "Dad Yang Yi, when you were writing this book, was there really such a person as Su Sanduo? Was Geng Xia, who played Su Sanduo, based on Su Sanduo?" Of course, there was no point in discussing this question. It was obvious that Soldier's Assault was liked by many people. At noon, because director Chen Fengchen went back to Beijing to attend the celebration party for Soldier's Assault, Yang Huan, who didn't have to go to filming, called Yang Yi. She said excitedly to Yang Yi, "Big brother, let me tell you. In our class group, a teacher in the acting class suddenly recommended your Soldier's Assault." The girl smiled mischievously, "Hee, but he didn't praise you. He said that the drama was good and asked us to try to figure out Su Sanduo and class monitor Shi's acting skills. We can try to write a short biography of these two people with this drama." Soldier's Assault looked like it was going to be popular. Of course, this could only be verified when the data was released later. At noon, in the big bedroom of the children in Springfield Kindergarten, Mr. Mu was telling the children to go to bed and take a nap. Every child had a small bed about 1.3 meters long, which was just enough for them to sleep in. It wasn't wide, but it was enough for all the girls to line up in a row and the boys to line up in another row. But as usual, the little guys would not obediently climb onto the bed. The naughtiest ones, Wang Shijuan and a few other little boys, were screaming and running around, cooperating with the other children's loud voices. The whole bedroom was as lively as a vegetable market. Cici wasn't idle either. She was laughing so hard with her friends that she was convulsing with laughter. No one knew why they were chatting so happily. Perhaps it wasn't something fun. Children were easily influenced, so it was common for them to be happy about something small. "Okay, listen to me and go to bed. If anyone doesn't go to bed, Mr. Kai will find out. He'll lock the naughty children in an empty room so that everyone can sleep comfortably. You'll be scared alone in the room." Mr. Kai had to use his trump card. Amidst the screams and laughter, the children finally obediently climbed onto their beds. Even the naughtiest boy had no choice but to take off his little shoes under Mr. Kai's stare. However, whether they could sleep peacefully on their beds was another problem. On Cici's side, she burrowed under the blanket and stuck her head out with Lan Xian, who was on her left. They looked at each other with sparkling eyes and smiled. Shi. Lu Weisha was calling. Shi turned around and looked at Lu Weisha. Lu Weisha was also sleeping next to Shi. Shi, you're on vacation to celebrate Chinese Spring Festival, right? Lu Weisha chatted with Shi in Swedish, which was mixed with Chinese. Lu Weisha could actually communicate in Chinese now, but she was still not proficient. If she chatted with Shi alone, she was more inclined to use Swedish. Shi's Swedish was quite fluent. After many rounds of practice, Her vocabulary had become much richer. Perhaps this little girl really did have some talent for languages? Yes. She said excitedly, I'm going to go back to the countryside with Papa. Grandpa and Grandma's house is so fun. There are so many cute animals and piglets. But I'm not celebrating Chinese Spring Festival. My father is on vacation, but we can't go back to Sweden to play. Lu Weisha felt that she would be very lonely during this holiday, so she said disappointedly. Then what should we do? She was worried about her little friend. I don't know. My father said that we can travel. My mother also said that we can play. I don't know. Lu Weisha pouted and said, but I don't like to play with adults. I want to play with you. I want to play with you too. I don't want to play with adults either. She said. She paused, hesitated, and added, but I also want to play with my brother and Papa. Papa knows a lot of things. She said excitedly, Lu Weisha, my Papa knows magic. I'm learning from him. When I'm very good, I'll show you magic, okay? Okay. The world of children was very simple. Lu Weisha's mood inexplicably improved again. Suddenly, a big hand pressed down and Teacher Kai appeared in front of them. Teacher Kai helped the two girls tuck in the corners of the quilt and whispered, You two, don't whisper in bed. Hurry up and go to sleep. Hee. She hid in the quilt and laughed. She looked at her little friend with her big eyes, as if she had done something bad. Chapter 656. Assault of the Soldiers was really a hit. This TV series that had no big-name stars, no eye-catching beauties, and no lingering love, had a viewership rating of 3.7% on the first day, and by the second day, it had climbed to 6.2%. Boosted by good reviews, Soldiers Assault's ratings peaked at 9.7% within a week of its broadcast. The average ratings also broke through 7%. Of course, that was not the limit of the series. Chan Fengchen, who was filming Drawing Sword, had also sent several actors from Soldiers Assault to participate in some variety shows to tell their stories during the filming. This allowed more viewers to understand Soldiers Assault and let many of the older viewers realize how difficult it was to film the show. In fact, the old master had even produced an interview episode with a central TV interview program. Although it was recorded in advance, the scenes of some of the main actors going to the military camp for military training before filming began still touched many of the old viewers. If I don't act well, I'll be letting down my comrades. Gung Sha said those words with tears in his eyes when he left the army. That scene reminded many of the older viewers of Su Sanduo, who went from being a coward to a fighter in the TV series. They were so touched that they decided to persevere and continue to follow him. Let's not talk about Soldiers Assault. On the internet, a video went viral. At the same time, a childish song went viral. Pig, you have 2 holes in your nose. You still have snot when you have a cold. Cow cow. The children's tender singing and the childlike innocence in the song moved many viewers. Although it was just a performance by kindergarten children and there wasn't much to see, this song was unexpectedly pleasant to listen to. In the beginning, before the song became popular, people who accidentally heard it from their friends could not help but laugh and ask their friends, who wrote this song? It's so funny. Isn't the songwriter too talented? Of course, those who wanted to find out could still find the answer. After all, public information could be found on the Copyright Association's website, such as the names of the children who sang the song, as well as the name of the person who wrote the song. Yang Yi. Later, when the song became popular and many people could not help but hum along to the song, the reporters also wanted to report on this phenomenal children's song. They followed the clues and found the familiar name. Was it really written by Yang Yi? Was this Yang Yi really that Yang Yi? The answer was obvious. After all, it was Yang Yi and Murphy's private studio that released this song. Some impatient reporters began to tell everyone this news. Yang Yi, who had written so many affectionate love songs, had actually written a children's song. Of course, there were also reporters who were a step slower but had done their research. Their reports were more detailed and even included interviews with some parents to confirm a fact. Yang Yi wrote the nursery rhyme for his daughter's kindergarten performance. As we all know, Yang Yi is a famous slave to his daughter. His personal Weibo name is also Shi's Chef. For his daughter, he has written many best-selling fairy tales. Now, it's not strange for him to write an interesting children's song for his daughter. These reports also made many fans of Yang Yi or Murphy have a strong interest in the video that did not become popular before. One had to know that because Yang Yi was very protective of the child, although there were a lot of daily life and photos of Cici in those Weibo posts, the little girl's face was either pixelated or a photo with her back facing the camera, so that the front of her face could hardly be seen. Needless to say, Tong Tong, no one knew what the little girl looked like. She still had a photo of her face secretly taken by the paparazzi, LVU, to let everyone know that the love product of Yang Yi and Murphy was a very cute and beautiful little girl. However, a year had passed. The fans were eager to know if she, who had grown up a year, had become beautiful again. Therefore, the fans began to play the game of Find She in this video. The video was still clear, but after zooming in, the children's faces were a little blurry. They were all pink piggies. Which one was the she they were looking for? Of course, it was always right to find the most beautiful one. Under the careful investigation of the active netizens, Yang Luoqi and Cici stood out from the rest. Both of the little girls had delicate features, but it was difficult to tell which of the two little girls was the real Cici based on the blurry images. Many netizens ran to Yang Yi's micro-broadcast to ask Yang Yi. Unexpectedly, when Yang Yi saw their enthusiasm, he actually gave a rare response. The one with big eyes is she. Everyone likes the Song of the Pig, sung by the children very much. I have passed on these praises to them. The children are very happy. Thank you for your support. I also wish that every child in the world can grow up carefree, happy, and healthy, just like in the song. Song of the Pig was indeed popular. Not only did many children like this song, but even adults could not avoid it. This simple melody made many people involuntarily hum. It was worth mentioning that this song did not enter the sales charts because it was free. However, some nosy reporters named the two songs written by Yang Yi, Song of the Pig, and Chen Yijie's Steady Happiness, which did not chart in the mainland, as the uncrowned kings of the Chinese music industry in January. Of course, this statement was very controversial. Song of the Pig was not worth mentioning. Many people liked such a childish song, but they were not willing to acknowledge its status. Steady Happiness was also very controversial. Some people felt that the standard of Yang Yi's song was very poor. The melody was too plain, like plain water. It was sweet to drink when you were thirsty, but it was tasteless when you drank too much. It could only be given a score of 60. However, Chan Yijie's singing skills were excellent. His gentle voice and mature mannerisms made the song sound a little interesting. There were also people who gave a very high evaluation of the song. The complicated musical skills were reduced to a simple one. The lyrics were plain but full of life philosophy. The melody was smooth while maintaining a beautiful charm. For the older people, who had experienced the ups and downs of life and had climbed up from failure, listening to this song would have a very deep feeling. Therefore, people who liked this song would like it very much. Those who did not like this song or felt that it was just average would question the praise given to it by others. In any case, Yang Yi's fans were pleasantly surprised to find that although Yang Yi did not make any big moves, he was still active in the music industry. Everyone was looking forward to the day when Yang Yi and Murphy made a comeback. Actually, it was not that Yang Yi did not make any big moves. The Limit Challenge was one of his recent big moves. Although Yang Yi had already handed over the preparation of the show to his subordinates, he was not completely a hands-off boss. After knowing that Yang Yi had hit a wall in almost 10 TV stations, Yang Yi still decided to help. Yun Yang did not come out empty-handed. He had gone to so many TV stations and finally found a possibility of cooperation in Magic City TV station. Shanghai TV station happened to be at the end of February, and there was a non-primetime slot that was empty. It was Wednesday at 10 p.m. Yang Yi wanted to make it to March, or even start broadcasting at the end of February. Shanghai TV station was the best opportunity. However, Magic City TV station did not lack good shows. During this time slot, there were a few daytime variety shows eyeing it. There were also a few production companies who wanted to collaborate with Magic City TV station with their proposal. To get Magic City TV station's people to choose the Limit Challenge, among so many other options, it was not as simple as a competition of the show's brilliance. There was also a lot of connections and a lot of money behind it. Yang Yi did not have any connections in Magic City TV station, so he could only do it himself. Fortunately, Murphy and Luo Xin, the host of Magic City TV station's Jixin interview, had a good relationship. After Luo Xin found out, she was also willing to introduce Yang Yi to her best friend, a higher-up in Magic City TV station. Therefore, Yang Yi wanted to make a trip to Magic City. Here came the problem. It was inconvenient for Murphy to bring Tong Tong and Yang Yi on a business trip. It was not good to be outside in the middle of winter. After the holidays, she pestered her father to go to Magic City to play. What should they do? You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.